The Chicago boardroom went silent as the CEO's voice cut through the air like ice. "You're fired! Leave now!" Ethan Cole stood frozen, blood still drying on his sleeve from the fight in the alley. The fight where he'd saved her daughter's life just minutes before. He didn't defend himself. He didn't mention the bruises spreading across his ribs or the stranger who'd tried to drag a little girl into the shadows. He simply nodded, turned toward the door, and left the woman who had no idea she'd just destroyed the man who'd given everything to protect what mattered most to her. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story reaches. Stick with me until the end. You won't believe where this goes. The 43rd floor of the Mercer Capitol building overlooked Chicago like a throne room carved from steel and glass. At exactly 8:47 on a Tuesday morning in late October, Vivian Mercer stood at the head of the executive boardroom with her arms crossed, staring down 12 department heads who shifted uncomfortably in their Italian leather chairs. The morning sun cut through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting sharp shadows across the polished mahogany table. She didn't raise her voice. She never needed to. "Late," she said simply. The word landed like a gavel. Ethan Cole stood near the doorway in his gray facilities uniform, one hand gripping the strap of his work bag. His left eye was already beginning to swell, the skin around it turning an ugly purple red. A thin line of blood had dried along his knuckles, and his breathing came shallow and careful, like something inside his chest had cracked and every inhale was a negotiation with pain. "Sorry," he said quietly. Vivian's expression didn't change. Her dark eyes remained fixed on him with the kind of cold assessment that made grown men reconsider their career choices. 2 years, 3 months, and 11 days. That's how long you've worked here. Perfect attendance until today, 16 minutes late. I know. Do you have an explanation? Ethan's jaw tightened. He glanced briefly at the executives watching him like he was some kind of specimen under glass, then back at Vivian. No, ma'am. She tilted her head slightly, studying him the way someone might inspect a flawed product on an assembly line. No traffic? No emergency? No excuse at all? No excuse, Ethan repeated. One of the senior directors, a man named Gerald Hutchins with silver hair and an expensive Rolex that caught the morning light, leaned back in his chair. Vivian, maybe we could discuss this privately, and I didn't ask for input, Vivian said without looking at him. Gerald shut his mouth and stared at his notepad. Vivian stepped closer to Ethan, her heels clicking against the polished marble floor with a rhythm that sounded like a countdown. She was 36, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Ethan made in 2 months. Her dark hair was pulled back in a flawless knot that looked severe and intentional. Everything about her screamed control, precision, power. You know what this company values, she said. Yes, ma'am. Precision, accountability, standards that don't bend based on convenience or circumstance. Yes, ma'am. And you chose to walk in here 16 minutes late without a single word of explanation or even an attempt to call ahead. Ethan's shoulders sagged just slightly, but he didn't look away from her. I understand. Vivian turned toward the table, addressing the room now instead of him. This is what happens when you lower the bar, when you make exceptions, when you decide that rules only matter sometimes or only apply to certain people. She turned back to Ethan. You're terminated, effective immediately. HR will process your final check by end of business today. Security will escort you out. Someone at the table, Laura Chen from operations, inhaled sharply. Another person looked down at their papers like the wood grain had suddenly become fascinating. Ethan nodded once, a small movement that seemed to cost him more than it should have. I'm sorry, he said again, his voice barely above a whisper. And then he turned and walked out, his footsteps quiet against the marble, the door closing behind him with a soft click that somehow sounded louder than a slam would have. The room remained silent for several seconds. Gerald finally cleared his throat, his fingers drumming nervously on the table. Vivian, that seemed a bit necessary, Vivian finished, her tone making it clear the discussion was over. Anyone else want to debate company policy this morning? No one did. She gathered her tablet and leather portfolio. We'll reconvene at 2 to discuss the Henderson merger. Laura, I want those revised projections on my desk by noon. Gerald, fix the discrepancy in the quarterly report before the board sees it. Everyone else, get back to work." They scattered like startled birds. Vivian walked back to her office, her stride measured and confident, and closed the heavy door behind her with a controlled motion that was almost gentle. Only then, alone in the silence of her private domain, did she allow herself to pause. She didn't sit down. Instead, she stood at the floor-to-ceiling window and stared out at the city stretching endlessly in every direction. The morning sun reflected off 1,000 glass towers, cold and brilliant, making Chicago look like a kingdom of mirrors and money. Somewhere down there, millions of people were starting their days, commuting, working, struggling, succeeding, failing. Her phone buzzed on the desk. She ignored it. This was the part of leadership no one talked about at the conferences or in the business books. The part where you made the hard call and everyone looked at you like you'd just kicked a loyal dog in front of its owner. But if you didn't hold the line, if you didn't enforce the standards without favoritism or sentiment, the whole carefully constructed system fell apart. That was the truth people didn't want to hear. Excellence required sacrifice. Standards required enforcement. Ethan Cole had been a good employee. Quiet. Competent. Never caused trouble. Never complained. Never asked for special treatment. But late was late. The phone buzzed again, vibrating against the glass desktop. Vivian exhaled and walked over, glancing at the screen with mild irritation. Mia, calling her daughter, calling from school. Vivian frowned. Mia knew not to call during work hours unless it was important. She picked up immediately, already calculating how quickly she could resolve whatever minor crisis had prompted the call. Mia, sweetheart, I'm in meetings all morning. Is everything— Mom! The word came out strangled, breathless, completely wrong. Every muscle in Vivian's body went rigid. Mia, what's wrong? What happened? I'm okay now, but— Mia's voice cracked and wobbled. Mom, something bad happened. Vivian's hand tightened around the phone so hard her knuckles went white. Where are you right now? Are you hurt? Tell me right now if you're hurt. No, I'm at school now. Mrs. Henderson is here, but on the way here this morning, this man, he grabbed me. Mom, he tried to pull me into the alley and— The world tilted sideways. What man? Where? Mia, tell me exactly what happened, right now. In the alley near the bus stop, the one by the construction site. He came up behind me and grabbed my arm and pulled me backward, and I screamed, and he put his hand over my mouth, and— Mia was talking faster now, the words tumbling out. And then someone came running, and he yelled at the man to let me go, and they fought, Mom. They really fought. There was blood, and the man who helped me got hurt really bad, and— Slow down? Take a breath. Who fought him? Who helped you? I don't know his name. I never saw him before. He was wearing gray clothes, like a uniform. He told the bad man to let me go, and when he didn't, he just attacked him. And they were hitting each other, and I was so scared, but he kept saying, run, go to school, you're safe now. So I ran. I ran as fast as I could, and I got to school and told Mrs. Henderson, and she called the police, and they're here now, and— Mom, are you coming? Please come. I'm walking out the door right now. Stay with Mrs. Henderson. Don't go anywhere. Don't talk to anyone except the police and your teacher. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Okay. Mom, I was so scared. I know, baby, I know. But you're safe now. You did exactly right. I'm coming. Okay. Mia, are you absolutely sure you're not hurt? He didn't hurt you? No. The man stopped him before he could. Mom, the man who helped me was bleeding. His face was all messed up, and he was holding his side like it hurt, and I think maybe he needs help too. Something cold and sharp turned over in Vivian's chest, but she pushed it aside. The police will handle that. I'm coming right now. I love you. I love you too. Vivian ended the call and was already moving, grabbing her coat, her bag, her keys. She didn't stop at her assistant's desk to explain. She just walked straight to the elevator and jabbed the button 6 times before it arrived. Tkak. She made it to Lincoln Park Academy in 8 minutes, breaking every traffic law between the Loop and the North Side campus where Mia attended 3rd grade. She double-parked in front of the main entrance, not caring about the angry honk from the car behind her, and ran inside. The principal, Dr. Margaret Harrison, met her at the front desk along with 2 police officers, one a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, the other a younger man with a notebook. And sitting in the main office with a fleece blanket around her shoulders and an unopened juice box clutched in both hands was Mia. Vivian dropped to her knees in front of her daughter and pulled her into her arms. "I'm here," she whispered fiercely. "I'm here. You're safe. I've got you." Mia clung to her and started crying. Not the scared crying from before, but the kind of deep, shuddering sobs that only come after the fear has passed, and the shock begins to set in, and the body finally feels safe enough to fall apart. Vivian held her and stroked her hair and whispered the useless, necessary things that mothers say. "It's okay. You're okay. I'm here now. Nothing's going to hurt you, I promise." The female officer, whose nameplate read Santos, crouched down beside them. Her voice was gentle. "Mrs. Mercer, I'm Officer Santos. Your daughter was incredibly brave this morning. She gave us a very good description of the suspect, and we have units canvassing the area right now." Vivian looked up, her arms still wrapped around Mia. "Did you find him?" "Not yet. But we have multiple officers searching the neighborhood, and we're reviewing security footage from nearby businesses. We will find him." "And the man who helped her? The one who fought him off?" Officer Santos glanced at her partner, then back at Vivian. Something in her expression shifted. According to Mia's statement, an adult male intervened when he witnessed the attempted abduction. He engaged physically with the suspect and allowed Mia to escape. She said he was injured during the altercation, but told her to run to school. By the time we arrived at the scene, approximately 7 minutes after the initial 911 call, both men had left the area. "What do you mean, both men left?" "There was no one at the scene when we arrived. We found clear evidence of a struggle, some blood on the pavement, scuff marks, a torn piece of fabric that appears to be from a jacket, but no witnesses and no individuals present." Vivian pulled back slightly from Mia, her hands on her daughter's shoulders. "Mia, sweetheart, look at me. Do you remember anything else about the man who helped you? Anything at all that might help us find him?" Mia wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, leaving a streak of tears across her cheek. "He was tall, taller than you. He had dark hair, kind of messy, and he was wearing gray clothes, like a work uniform with his name on it, but I didn't see what it said because everything happened so fast." Gray work uniform, with a name embroidered on it. Something cold and terrible began to crystallize in Vivian's chest. "What else?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "He had nice eyes. Even though he looked really hurt, his eyes were nice, not scary. And he smiled at me, Mom, even though he was bleeding. He smiled and said, 'You're safe now. Go to school. Everything's going to be okay.' And then I ran." "Did he say anything else? His name or where he worked or—" "No. Just that I should run. That I was safe." Mia's lower lip trembled. "Mom, do you think he's okay? He was hurt really bad. The bad man hit him in the face and in his stomach, and he fell down, but he got back up and kept fighting anyway." The younger officer stepped forward. "Mrs. Mercer, we'd like to take a formal statement from Mia when she feels ready. We understand this is traumatic, but any additional details she can provide might help us locate both the suspect and the individual who intervened." Vivian nodded without really hearing him. Her mind was racing, putting together pieces that didn't want to fit, but were clicking into place anyway with horrible inevitability. Gray uniform, tall, dark hair, injured, told Mia to run, and then showed up to work 16 minutes late with a swollen eye and blood on his hands and refused to offer a single explanation. She stood abruptly. "I need to make a phone call. Dr. Harrison, can Mia wait in your office while I step outside for just one moment?" The principal nodded. "Of course. Mia, sweetheart, why don't you come sit with me? I have some crackers, and we can call your aunt if you'd like to talk to her." Mia looked at Vivian with wide, uncertain eyes. "You're coming back?" 60 seconds, I promise." Vivian walked quickly into the hallway, pulled out her phone, and dialed the direct line for building security at Mercer Capital. Marcus Webb, head of security, picked up on the second ring. "Webb here? Marcus, it's Vivian Mercer. I need you to pull footage from every exterior camera covering the northwest side of the building between 8:15 and 8:45 this morning. Focus specifically on the employee entrance and the alley that runs along Walker." "Is there a security concern, ma'am?" "Just pull it. Have it ready in the monitoring room. I'll be there in 20 minutes. "Yes, ma'am." She ended the call and stood there for a moment staring at nothing, her heart pounding. Please let me be wrong, she thought. Please let this be a coincidence. But she already knew it wasn't. Mom. She spent 15 more minutes at the school, answering questions from the police and making sure Mia was stable enough to be left with Dr. Harrison and the school counselor. Officer Santos promised to keep her updated on the investigation and took Vivian's contact information. Then Vivian drove back to the Mercer Capitol building, going exactly the speed limit this time, her hands gripping the steering wheel, her mind a blank wall of static. Marcus was waiting in the security monitoring room on the second floor when she arrived. The room was small and windowless, filled with banks of screens showing live feeds from cameras positioned throughout and around the building. He'd already queued up the footage she'd requested. "Here," he said, pointing at one of the larger screens. "Northwest corner, starting at 8:15. Vivian leaned in, her hands braced on the edge of the desk. The camera showed the side alley that ran parallel to the building, a narrow corridor between Mercer Capitol and the neighboring structure, lined with dumpsters and utility access points. Employees sometimes used it as a shortcut from the bus stop on Wacker. At first, the frame was empty except for urban debris and morning shadows. The timestamp read 8:31:18. Then a small figure appeared at the far end of the alley, a little girl in a Navy school uniform with a backpack bouncing against her shoulders, walking with the purposeful stride of a child who'd been told to go straight to school and not dawdle. "Mia." Vivian's breath caught in her throat. A man entered the frame behind her, maybe 6 seconds later, tall, wearing a dark jacket and jeans, moving faster than someone should be moving at 8:31 in the morning. His gait was wrong, too focused, too predatory. He closed the distance quickly. He reached out and grabbed Mia's arm, yanking her backward toward the shadows between two industrial dumpsters. Mia's mouth opened, screaming, though there was no audio, and she tried to pull away, but he was too strong. His other hand came up, covering her mouth, and he started dragging her deeper into the alley, away from the street, away from help. Vivian's hand flew to her mouth, and then another figure sprinted into view from the opposite direction. Gray facilities uniform, dark hair. Moving like someone who'd been trained to move in crisis situations, fast, efficient, no hesitation, no wasted motion. Ethan Cole. He closed the distance in 4 strides and hit the attacker like a linebacker breaking through a defensive line. The impact drove the man away from Mia and slammed him against the brick wall hard enough that Vivian could almost hear the collision. The attacker's grip on Mia broke, and she stumbled backward, falling to the pavement. The attacker recovered faster than he should have and swung wild at Ethan's head. Ethan blocked it with his forearm, but the follow-up punch caught him in the ribs, a solid hit that made Ethan's entire body fold forward for a second. But he didn't go down. Instead, he surged back up, grabbed the attacker by the jacket, and drove his knee up hard into the man's midsection. Once, twice. The attacker doubled over and Ethan shoved him back, putting himself between the man and Mia. The attacker pulled something from his pocket, Vivian couldn't see what, and lunged. Ethan sidestepped and caught the man's wrist, twisting it in a controlled motion that looked practiced, trained. The object fell. The attacker swung his other fist and caught Ethan across the face, snapping his head to the side. Blood appeared, dark against Ethan's skin, but Ethan didn't let go. He twisted harder, forced the man down to one knee, then delivered a short, brutal punch to the side of his head. The attacker went limp. Ethan released him and immediately turned toward Mia, who was still on the ground, frozen. The footage had no audio, but Vivian could see him talking to her. He knelt down, moving stiffly now, clearly hurting, and put one hand on her shoulder. His mouth moved. Calm words. Steady. He pointed toward the street, toward safety, toward the school that was visible in the distance. Mia nodded and scrambled to her feet. Ethan watched her run, his hand pressed against his side where the attacker had hit him. He stayed there, kneeling in the alley, making sure she made it to the sidewalk and kept going. The attacker stirred. Ethan's head snapped back toward him, his body tensing, ready to fight again if he had to. But the man rolled over, got shakily to his feet, and ran in the opposite direction, disappearing from frame. Ethan stood slowly, breathing hard, blood visible on his face and his hands and the front of his uniform. He looked down at himself, seemed to assess the damage, then pulled out his phone and checked it. He looked at the time. And Vivian watched his expression change, just slightly, just for a second, into something that might have been resignation or defeat or just bone-deep exhaustion. And then he ran. He ran toward the Mercer Capitol building, holding his injured side, moving as fast as his battered body would allow. The timestamp read 8:36:42. He'd walked into the boardroom at 8:47. 11 minutes. 11 minutes to save a child's life and still tried desperately to make it to work on time because he knew what being late meant. And he'd done it anyway because a little girl was more important than a job. And he'd hoped, somehow he'd still hoped, that he could make it. Vivian stepped back from the monitor, her legs suddenly unsteady. "Ma'am," Marcus said carefully, "are you all right? Send that footage to the Chicago Police Department immediately. There was an attempted abduction this morning. They need this for their investigation." "An abduction? Jesus, is everyone okay?" "The child is safe." Vivian's voice sounded strange to her own ears, distant and hollow. "Send it now." "Yes, ma'am. Right away." "And Marcus? Who is the employee in the gray uniform? The one who intervened?" Marcus rewound the footage slightly and zoomed in on a frame where Ethan's face was partially visible. "That's Ethan Cole. Facilities maintenance. Good guy. Been with us a couple years. Why?" Vivian didn't answer. She was staring at the frozen image on the screen. Ethan Cole, battered and bleeding and checking his watch because he knew he was going to be late, and he knew exactly what that meant, and he'd come to work anyway. He'd saved her daughter's life and then walked into a room full of people who looked at him like he didn't matter, and he'd let himself be fired without saying a single word in his own defense. Not because he was weak, because he was the kind of man who believed that excuses diminished the act, that explaining would somehow cheapen what he'd done, that the little girl's safety was its own justification and didn't need to be bartered for his job. "Ma'am," Marcus said again. Vivian turned and walked out of the room without another word. She found Gerald Hutchins in his office on the 39th floor, reviewing quarterly reports and eating a salad from the executive cafeteria. He looked up when she entered without knocking, surprise flickering across his face. "Vivian, I was just about to send you the revised Henderson. I need Ethan Cole's personnel file," Vivian said without preamble. Gerald blinked. "The facilities worker you terminated this morning?" "Yes." "Vivian, I really don't think it's appropriate to—" What's it? "His file. Now." Something in her tone made Gerald set down his fork and turn to his computer. He typed quickly, pulled up the employee database, and rotated the screen toward her. Vivian scanned the information, her eyes moving rapidly across the fields. Name: Ethan Michael Cole. Age: 38. Position: Facilities Maintenance Technician. Level 2. Employment. Start date: May 14th, 2022. Education: Associate degree, Emergency Medical Services, City Colleges of Chicago. Previous employment: U.S. Army, Combat Medic, 2005 to 2015. Chicago Fire Department, Paramedic, 2016 to 2020. Military Service Awards, Bronze Star Medal, Army Commendation Medal, 2. Combat Medical Badge, Afghanistan Campaign Medal. Emergency. Contact: Ava Marie Cole, daughter, age 6. Marital status: widowed, 2021. Vivian stopped breathing. Widowed. She clicked on the notes section, her hands trembling slightly. Employee requested shift assignments compatible with elementary school drop-off/pickup schedule due to single-parent responsibilities. Request approved. Consistently reliable. No disciplinary issues on record. Exceeded safety protocol standards during mandatory building evacuation drill. November 2023. Provided medical assistance to employee who suffered cardiac episode in stairwell, January 2024. CPR certified. She scrolled further down. Prior career note. Left position as paramedic with Chicago Fire Department in 2020 to accept current role. Exit interview from CFD indicates departure was voluntary, citing need for schedule flexibility and reduced physical demands following injury. Employee has medical accommodation on file for limited heavy lifting due to prior service-related back injury. She clicked on the accommodation file. L4 to L5, disc herniation sustained during military service, exacerbated during paramedic work. Employee cleared for current duties with restriction on lifting over 50 pounds without assistance. A combat medic, a paramedic, a decorated veteran who'd left a prestigious career because he needed to be home for his daughter, and she'd fired him for being late. "Vivian?" Gerald said carefully. "What's this about?" She didn't answer. She pulled out her phone and dialed the main HR line. "Human Resources, this is Patricia." "Patricia, this is Vivian Mercer. I need Ethan Cole's home address and personal phone number immediately." "Ma'am, I'm not sure I can release that information without—" "I'm the CEO. Release it." A pause. "One moment." Vivian waited, her jaw clenched so tight it hurt. "His address is 2847 South Emerald Avenue, Unit B. Phone number is 312-555-0198. Thank you." Vivian ended the call and headed for the door. "Vivian, wait," Gerald called after her. "What's going on? Did something happen?" She stopped in the doorway and turned back to face him. "The man I fired this morning saved my daughter's life. He was late because he fought off someone trying to abduct her, and he never said a word about it." Gerald's face went pale. "Oh my God." "Send me everything we have on him. Every performance review, every supervisor note, every piece of documentation in his file." "Of course. Right away." Vivian left. Back. Ethan Cole lived in a narrow brick townhouse in a working-class neighborhood called Bridgeport, 20 minutes south of the Loop. The kind of place where people kept their heads down, their doors locked, and their business to themselves. Small front yards, chain-link fences, cars that had seen better decades parked at crooked angles along the curb. Vivian pulled up in front of 2847 just as the sun began to dip behind the roof lines, casting long shadows across the cracked pavement. She sat in her Mercedes for a moment, staring at the house. This was insane. She was the CEO of a multi-million-dollar investment firm. She didn't chase down fired employees to their homes. She didn't second-guess her decisions. She didn't allow guilt or sentiment to override policy. But the image of Ethan kneeling in front of Mia, his hand on her shoulder, his face bloodied, and his body broken, telling her she was safe. Vivian got out of the car. She climbed the 3 concrete steps to the front door and knocked, her knuckles rapping against the wood with more force than she intended. No answer. She knocked again, harder this time, then waited. Still nothing. She pulled out her phone and dialed the number Patricia had given her. It rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. A man's voice, quiet and professional. "You've reached Ethan Cole. Leave a message." Beep. "Mr. Cole, this is Vivian Mercer. I need to speak with you. It's urgent. Please call me back at this number as soon as possible." She ended the call and stood there on the small porch, unsure what to do next. A woman appeared on the porch of the neighboring unit, older, maybe 70, with gray hair pulled into a bun and a cardigan sweater despite the mild temperature. She eyed Vivian with open suspicion. "You looking for Ethan?" the woman asked, her voice carrying the rough edges of someone who'd lived in Chicago her entire life. "Yes. Do you know where he is?" "Urgent care clinic on 5th Street. Saw him leave about an hour ago with his little girl. He looked pretty banged up. Ava looked worried sick." The woman's eyes narrowed. "You a friend of his?" "Something like that. Which clinic?" "Care Now, 2 blocks east, then north. Can't miss it." She paused. "He in some kind of trouble?" "No, the opposite." The woman studied Vivian for a long moment, taking in the expensive suit, the Mercedes parked at the curb, the whole carefully constructed image of power and money. "You're the boss lady, aren't you? The one who fired him." Vivian's throat tightened. "How did you—" "Ava told my granddaughter this afternoon. Said her daddy lost his job for helping somebody. That about right?" "It's more complicated than that. Usually is." The woman's expression softened just slightly. "Ethan's a good man. Best neighbor I've had in 40 years in this building. Fixes things without being asked. Shovels my walk in winter. Watches out for the kids on this block. Whatever trouble happened today, I guarantee it wasn't his fault." "I know," Vivian said quietly. "Then maybe you should tell him that instead of me." Vivian nodded and walked back to her car. Care Now Urgent Care occupied a converted storefront between a laundromat and a corner bodega, its waiting room visible through large plate glass windows. The place had the worn, functional look of a medical facility that served a neighborhood where people couldn't afford to take time off work for appointments. Vivian parked and pushed through the entrance. The waiting room smelled like disinfectant and old coffee and human exhaustion. A television mounted in the corner played local news on mute, the closed captions running a beat behind. 5 other people sat scattered across the plastic chairs, staring at their phones or old magazines or nothing at all. And in the far corner, slumped against the wall with his eyes half closed and his face a canvas of purple and red, was Ethan Cole. His daughter sat beside him, a small girl with dark braids and worried brown eyes, and a tablet clutched in her lap that she wasn't looking at. She was looking at her father instead, watching him with the kind of fierce attention that children develop when they've learned that the adults in their lives can break. Vivian stopped just inside the doorway. Ethan's face was worse than it had been in the security footage. The swelling around his left eye had gotten dramatically worse, turning the entire socket a deep purple that spread down his cheekbone. His lip was split, encrusted with dried blood. His right arm rested in a makeshift sling fashioned from what looked like his own jacket, and he held it close to his body like moving it would cost more than he could afford. The little girl noticed Vivian first. She tugged on Ethan's sleeve with her small hand. "Dad, someone's staring at us." Ethan opened his eyes slowly, like even that small movement required effort, and followed his daughter's gaze across the waiting room. When he saw Vivian, his expression didn't change. He didn't look surprised. He didn't look angry. He just looked tired in a way that went deeper than physical exhaustion. Vivian crossed the room, her heels clicking against the linoleum, and stopped a few feet away from them. "Mr. Cole?" "Mrs. Mercer." His voice was rough, strained, like talking hurt his ribs. "May I sit?" He gestured vaguely at the empty chair beside him with his good hand. Vivian sat, folding her hands tightly in her lap. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The television droned on above them. Somewhere in the back, a door opened and closed. The little girl, Ava, watched Vivian with the kind of sharp, unblinking curiosity that only children possess, the kind that sees through expensive suits and professional masks. "You're the lady from Dad's work," Ava said. It wasn't a question. "Yes." "You're the one who fired him." Ethan sighed, a careful exhale that didn't expand his chest too far. "Ava." "What?" "She did. You said so." Vivian felt something twist painfully in her chest, sharp and unfamiliar. "Yes, I did." "Are you here to fire him again?" "No." "Then why are you here?" That was the question, wasn't it? Why was she here? Sitting in an urgent care clinic in a neighborhood she'd never visited, talking to a man she'd humiliated in front of a boardroom full of executives just hours ago. Vivian turned to Ethan. "I saw the security footage." His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but he didn't respond. "From the cameras outside the building. I saw what happened this morning in the alley." Ethan looked down at his hands, one resting in the sling, the other curled loosely on his knee, the knuckles scraped raw. "Okay. The little girl you helped." Vivian's voice caught, and she had to force the words out. "That was my daughter." Now he did look at her, just a brief glance, but enough for Vivian to see the flicker of recognition in his eyes, followed immediately by something that might have been resignation. "She's safe?" he asked quietly. "Yes. Because of you." Ethan nodded once and looked away again. "Good. Why didn't you tell me?" "Tell you what?" "That you were late because you saved a child's life. My child's life." He shrugged with his good shoulder, then winced as the movement pulled something that didn't want to be pulled. "Wouldn't have changed anything. It would have changed everything." "No," Ethan said, his voice soft but completely firm. "It wouldn't have. You run a company. You have rules, standards. I broke one. That's all there is to it. That's not that." "Mrs. Mercer." He turned to face her more fully now, and the exhaustion in his eyes was so deep and complete that it made Vivian want to look away, but she forced herself not to. "I've been in a lot of bad situations in my life. Combat, car accidents, fires, overdoses. I've seen people make hard calls under impossible pressure. I don't blame you for doing your job. I really don't. You should." "Maybe, but I don't." He shifted slightly, trying to find a position that didn't aggravate his ribs. "I knew the risk when I stopped. I knew I'd be late. I made the choice anyway because a scared kid being dragged into an alley matters more than a paycheck. That's on me, not you. You have a daughter to take care of. Yeah, I do. He glanced at Ava, who was still watching them both with solemn attention. And she's going to learn that sometimes you do the right thing even when it costs you everything, even when it hurts, even when nobody sees it or cares. His voice dropped lower. That lesson's worth more than keeping any job. Vivian's throat felt tight. What happened to your wife? Ethan's expression closed down immediately, a door slamming shut. That's not relevant. I read your file. It said, I know what it said. His tone wasn't angry, but it carried a finality that made it clear the subject was off limits. And it's still not relevant. They sat in silence for a long moment. A nurse appeared in the doorway leading to the back, clipboard in hand. Ethan Cole? Ethan stood slowly, gritting his teeth against obvious pain. Ava jumped up and grabbed his good hand immediately. That's us, Ethan said. The nurse nodded. Right this way. Ethan looked at Vivian one last time. Take care of your daughter, Mrs. Mercer. She's a brave kid, braver than she should have to be. And then he walked away, his daughter at his side, leaving Vivian sitting alone in a waiting room that suddenly felt much too empty and much too quiet. Oh, she should have left. She had a company to run, a daughter to get home to, 1,000 urgent matters that required her immediate attention. But she stayed. She sat in that uncomfortable plastic chair and stared at the muted television and waited. 43 minutes later, Ethan and Ava emerged from the back hallway. Ethan's arm was in a proper medical sling now, white and official-looking. Clean bandages covered the worst of the cuts on his face, and medical tape held together the split in his lip. He walked even more carefully than before, like the examination had cataloged every injury and made them all more real. Vivian stood when she saw them. Ethan stopped, genuine surprise crossing his battered features. You're still here. I wanted to make sure you were all right. I'm fine. Cracked ribs, sprained wrist, some bruising and lacerations. Nothing that won't heal. He paused. They wanted me to go to the ER for x-rays, but I can't afford... He cut himself off and shook his head. Doesn't matter. I'm fine. Mr. Cole, Ethan, if you're going to keep showing up in places I am, you might as well use my first name. Despite everything, Vivian almost smiled. Almost. Ethan, then. I owe you more than an apology. You don't owe me anything. Yes, I do. She took a breath, choosing her words carefully. I built a company on precision and accountability. I still believe, that if everyone follows the rules, if everyone meets the standards without exception, then the system works. And it has worked. For years, it's worked extremely well. Ethan waited, listening. But this morning I realized that system has a critical flaw. What's that? It doesn't account for people like you. Ethan frowned slightly. I don't follow. People who do the right thing even when it destroys them. People who carry impossible burdens that no one else can see. People who... Her voice wavered, and she steadied it with effort. People who save children and then walk into a boardroom and accept humiliation without defending themselves because they believe the act should speak for itself. Ethan looked away, uncomfortable. I'm not special, Mrs. Mercer. I just did what anyone would have done. No, Vivian said quietly but firmly. You didn't. Most people would have walked past, or called 911 and waited, or helped, and then made absolutely certain everyone knew about it. You fought a man who could have killed you, saved my daughter, and then tried to go to work like it was nothing. I needed the job. I know, and I took it from you. Ava tugged on Ethan's sleeve again. Dad, I'm really hungry. I know, sweetheart. We'll stop somewhere on the way home. Vivian reached into her bag and pulled out a business card. She held it out to Ethan. He hesitated, then took it with his good hand. That's my direct line, Vivian said. Not the office number. Mine. Personal. Ethan looked at the card, then at her. Why? Because I'd like to talk to you again. When you're feeling better. About your job. About... She paused. About a lot of things. Mrs. Mercer, I appreciate this, but please just think about it. Ethan studied her face for a long moment, like he was trying to figure out what she really wanted, what the angle was. Finally, he nodded slowly. Okay, I'll think about it. Thank you. Ethan pocketed the card and turned toward the exit, Ava's hand still clasped in his. Vivian watched them go, watched the way Ethan moved, slow and careful and hurting, but still standing, still taking care of his daughter, still putting one foot in front of the other because that's what you did when someone depended on you. And for the first time in a very long time, Vivian Mercer realized she had absolutely no idea what to do next. The door closed behind them with a soft pneumatic hiss, and Vivian stood alone in the urgent care waiting room, surrounded by strangers, wondering how a single morning could dismantle everything she thought she understood about strength and sacrifice, and what it meant to lead. Outside, the Chicago evening settled over the city like a blanket, and somewhere in the fading light, a man who'd lost everything for doing the right thing was taking his daughter home. Vivian didn't go home that night. She called her sister Claire from the car, asked her to pick up Mia from school, and stay with her overnight, and drove back to the office through evening traffic that crawled along Lakeshore Drive like the city itself was exhausted. The sky had turned the color of bruises, purple and gray and dark blue bleeding together, and the first stars were trying to push through the light pollution that never quite let Chicago go dark. The Mercer Capitol building stood mostly empty at 7 in the evening, just the security staff and a handful of workaholics still hunched over their desks on the upper floors. Vivian took the elevator to 43 and walked through the silent hallways to her office, her heels echoing against marble that seemed too loud in the quiet. She sat at her desk and opened Ethan Cole's personnel file on her computer again, reading through details she'd already memorized but needed to see one more time. Bronze Star Medal. Combat Medical Badge. Widowed, 2021. She clicked on a subfolder she'd missed earlier, one labeled Reference Letters, Hiring. The first document opened, dated April 2022, written on Chicago Fire Department letterhead. To whom it may concern, Ethan Cole served as a paramedic with CFD Engine Company 18 for 4 years. During that time, he demonstrated exceptional skill, composure under pressure, and dedication to saving lives. He responded to over 2,000 emergency calls and maintained a perfect record of patient care. His departure from our department is a significant loss. Ethan is leaving not due to performance issues or disciplinary concerns, but because the demands of paramedic work, irregular hours, mandatory overtime, night shifts, are incompatible with his responsibilities as a single parent. He has made the difficult choice to prioritize his daughter's stability over his career advancement. Any organization that hires Ethan Cole will be gaining a person of extraordinary character, competence, and integrity. Respectfully, Captain James Morrison, CFD Engine Company. 18. Vivian read it twice, then clicked on the next document. This one was handwritten, scanned into the system, the ink slightly smudged. Dear Hiring Manager, my name is Dorothy Chen, and I live in the apartment below Ethan Cole and his daughter Ava. I'm writing this because Ethan asked me to be a character reference, and I said yes immediately. I'm 74 years old, and I've lived in this building for 40 years. I've seen a lot of neighbors come and go. Ethan is the best one I've ever had. When my husband died 2 years ago, Ethan showed up at my door with groceries and asked if I needed anything fixed around the apartment. He replaced my kitchen faucet and didn't charge me a dime. When I fell on the stairs last winter, he heard me cry out and came running. He carried me back to my apartment and stayed with me until the ambulance came. He shovels my walk when it snows. He picks up my prescriptions when I can't get to the pharmacy. He watches out for the kids on this block like they're his own. His daughter Ava is a sweet little girl who's been through more than any 6-year-old should have to handle. Ethan is raising her alone and doing a beautiful job. She's polite, kind, and happy despite everything. If you don't hire Ethan Cole, you're making a mistake. Sincerely, Dorothy Chen. Vivian sat back in her chair and stared at the ceiling, her throat tight. She'd fired a decorated combat veteran, a paramedic who'd saved thousands of lives, a widowed father who shoveled his elderly neighbor's walkway because he'd been 16 minutes late. She'd built an empire on standards and accountability, and she'd used those standards to destroy a man who embodied everything those words were supposed to mean. Her phone buzzed. A text from Claire. Mia's asleep. She's okay, but she had nightmares during her nap. I'm staying overnight. Take care of yourself. Vivian typed back. Thank you. I'll be home in the morning. She set the phone down and looked out at the city sprawling beneath her windows, a million lights trying to hold back the darkness, and realized she'd been doing everything wrong for a very long time. Tag. Thursday morning arrived cold and sharp, the kind of October day where the wind came off the lake with teeth. Vivian spent 2 hours on conference calls she barely registered, approving budgets and signing off on reports while her mind stayed stuck in an urgent care waiting room, watching a battered man comfort his frightened daughter. At 10:30, Gerald knocked on her office door. "Come in," Vivian said without looking up from her computer. Gerald entered cautiously, carrying a folder. "You asked for all documentation on Ethan Cole. This is everything: performance reviews, supervisor notes, incident reports, the works." "Put it on my desk." He did, then hesitated. "Vivian, about yesterday. I know you don't want to discuss it, but the board is going to ask questions about the termination once they hear about—" "Let them ask. The optics are terrible. If this gets out, a CEO firing the man who saved her daughter, the press will crucify us." Vivian finally looked up at him. "Is that what you're worried about? Optics?" "I'm worried about the company, about you." "Then trust me to handle it." Gerald nodded slowly. "Of course. Is there anything else you need?" "Yes. I want you to draft a new position. Director of Safety and Emergency Operations. Compensation at executive level. Full benefits, flexible schedule. Report directly to me." Gerald's eyebrows went up. "For who?" "Just draft it. Have it ready by end of business today." "Vivian, end of business, Gerald." He left without another word. Vivian opened the folder and started reading. Ethan Cole's performance reviews read like a document written about someone from another planet. Every evaluation, quarterly, annual, supervisor notes, said essentially the same thing in different words. Exceeds expectations in all areas. Reliable, competent, proactive. No complaints from staff or management. Maintains equipment and facilities to exceptional standard. One note from the facilities manager, dated 6 months prior, stood out. Employee Cole identified a potential gas leak in basement mechanical room during routine maintenance, evacuated the area, contacted emergency services, and remained on site to guide repair crew despite being off duty. Leak was confirmed as serious and potentially catastrophic. Cole's quick action likely prevented major incident. Another note from building security. During fire drill November 14, 2023, employee Cole took command when several occupants panicked in stairwell. Calmly directed evacuation, assisted elderly tenant on 22nd floor, and remained to verify all floors were clear before exiting himself. Professionalism beyond his role. And another, this one from a VP she'd never met. My assistant collapsed in the break room on January 18, 2024. Ethan Cole was first on scene, performed CPR until paramedics arrived. Doctors said his quick response saved her life. I tried to give him a cash reward. He refused it. Vivian closed the folder and pressed her fingers against her temples. She'd had a man like this working in her building for over 2 years, and she'd never known his name until she fired him. Her phone rang. An internal line from reception. Ms. Mercer, there's a Detective Ramirez from Chicago PD here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but says it's regarding an ongoing investigation. Vivian's stomach tightened. Send her up. 3 minutes later, a woman in her early 50s entered Vivian's office, sharp-eyed, wearing a gray blazer and carrying a badge clipped to her belt. She extended her hand. Ms. Mercer, Detective Angela Ramirez, Area Central Investigative Unit. Thank you for seeing me without notice. Of course. Is this about my daughter? Partially. May I sit? Please. Detective Ramirez settled into the chair across from Vivian's desk and pulled out a small notebook. I've been assigned to your daughter's case. Officer Santos forwarded the security footage from your building. That footage is extremely helpful, and we're using it to identify the suspect. Have you found him? Not yet, but we have several strong leads. The footage gave us a clear image of his face, and we're running it through databases now. She paused. I'm actually here about the other individual in the footage, the man who intervened. Ethan Cole. Yes. We'd like to speak with him, get a formal statement. He's a material witness and possibly saved your daughter's life. But we haven't been able to locate him. The address we have on file appears to be outdated. I was hoping you might know how to reach him since the incident occurred near your building and he appears to be an employee. Vivian felt something cold settle in her chest. He was an employee. I terminated him yesterday. Ramirez's pen stopped moving. She looked up slowly. You fired him? When? Yesterday morning, about 20 minutes after the incident with my daughter. Did you know at the time that he was the one who helped her? No, I found out later. Ramirez studied her for a long moment. I see. I have his current address and phone number. I can provide them to you. That would be helpful. Ramirez flipped to a new page. Can you also tell me anything about his condition after the altercation? The footage shows he sustained injuries. He had a black eye, split lip, possibly broken ribs. He went to an urgent care clinic after I terminated him. Which clinic? Care Now on 5th Street in Bridgeport. Ramirez wrote quickly. And you spoke with him there? Yes. What was his demeanor? Vivian hesitated. Calm, tired. He didn't seem angry about being fired. He just wanted to make sure my daughter was safe. Did he indicate any intent to file a complaint or take legal action against you or the company? No, the opposite. He said he didn't blame me for doing my job. Ramirez set down her pen and leaned back slightly. Ms. Mercer, I've been doing this work for 23 years. I've seen a lot of witnesses and victims and heroes. What Mr. Cole did yesterday was extraordinary. He engaged physically with a violent criminal to protect a child he didn't know, sustained significant injuries, and then, according to what you're telling me, went to work and accepted termination without defending himself. That's correct. That's not normal behavior. I'm aware. People who do things like that usually have a background. Military, law enforcement, emergency services. Do you know anything about Mr. Cole's history? Vivian pulled up his file and turned her screen toward the detective. He's a combat veteran, former paramedic. He left that career to take a facilities position here because he needed schedule flexibility to raise his daughter alone. Ramirez read the screen, her expression shifting. Bronze Star, combat medic. She looked up. And you fired him? Yes. For being late? Yes. The detective closed her notebook and stood. Miss Mercer, I'm going to be direct with you because I think you need to hear it. In my professional opinion, Ethan Cole prevented what could have been a child abduction, kidnapping, or worse. He put himself in serious danger to protect your daughter. Men like him don't come along often. If I were you, I'd do everything possible to make this right. Vivian's jaw tightened. I'm trying to. Try harder. Ramirez handed Vivian a business card. If Mr. Cole contacts you before I reach him, please ask him to call me. We need a statement. And Miss Mercer, when you do make this right, and I hope you do, you should know that heroes like him don't usually ask for anything, but they deserve everything. She left without waiting for a response. Vivian sat alone in her office, the detective's words echoing in the silence, and picked up her phone. She dialed Ethan's number. It rang 6 times, then went to voicemail. Mr. Cole, this is Vivian Mercer again. I know you said you'd think about my offer to talk, but I need to speak with you sooner rather than later. There's a detective trying to reach you about what happened Tuesday morning. Her name is Angela Ramirez, and she needs a statement from you. I have her contact information when you're ready. Please call me back. She ended the call and stared at the phone in her hand like it might ring immediately. It didn't. Friday morning brought rain, cold, relentless October rain that turned Chicago gray and made the streets gleam like oil. Vivian spent the day in meetings she couldn't focus on, her phone on the table in front of her, waiting for a call that never came. At 4 in the afternoon, Gerald brought her the job description she'd requested. Director of Safety and Emergency Operations, he said, setting the document on her desk. Executive-level compensation, full benefits package, flexible schedule with core hours 9 to 3 to accommodate school-age dependents, direct report to CEO. I wasn't sure what specific duties you wanted outlined, so I kept it general. Oversight of building safety protocols, emergency response coordination, staff training. Vivian scanned the document. This is good. File it with HR. Are you going to tell me who this is for? Eventually. Gerald sighed. The board met this morning. They asked about the termination. What did you tell them? That it was a personnel matter handled according to company policy. But Vivian, if this becomes public, it won't. You can't guarantee that. If Cole decides to go to the press, or if the police investigation brings media attention, he won't go to the press. How do you know? Because he's not that kind of person. Gerald looked at her like she'd lost her mind. You've known him for 3 days. You fired him. You have no idea what kind of person he is or what he might do. Vivian met his eyes. Yes, I do, Ardats. Saturday morning, Vivian woke early and made breakfast for Mia. Pancakes shaped like stars, crispy bacon, fresh strawberries arranged in a smiley face on the plate. The kind of breakfast she usually didn't have time to make. Mia came downstairs in her pajamas, her hair a mess, and climbed onto a kitchen stool. You're home, she said, like this was unusual, which it was. I'm home. Are you sick? No, baby. I just wanted to spend the morning with you. Mia poured syrup over her pancakes, drowning them thoroughly. Can I ask you something? Always. The man who saved me, the one who got hurt, is he okay? Vivian's face stilled on the coffee mug she was holding. I think so. I saw him at the doctor and they were taking care of him. Did you thank him? I tried to. What did he say? Vivian sat down across from her daughter. He said he was just glad you were safe. He didn't want thanks. He just wanted to know you were okay. Mia chewed thoughtfully, syrup on her chin. He was really brave. The bad man hit him a lot and he kept getting back up. He didn't run away even though he was bleeding. I know. Mom? Yeah, sweetheart? Can we find him? I want to say thank you for real, and I want to make sure he's okay because he got hurt because of me. He didn't get hurt because of you. He got hurt because he's a good person who helped someone who needed help. But still, can we find him? Vivian reached across the table and wiped the syrup off Mia's face with a napkin. I'm working on it. Bad. Monday morning arrived with clear skies and cold wind. Vivian went to the office early, before 6, and sat at her desk watching the sun come up over Lake Michigan, pink and gold spreading across the water like something too beautiful for a city this hard. At 8:15, her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered immediately. Vivian Mercer. Ms. Mercer, it's Ethan Cole. Her heart jumped. Mr. Cole, thank you for calling me back. You said a detective was trying to reach me. Yes. Detective Angela Ramirez. She needs a statement about Tuesday morning. I can give you her number. Okay. A pause. Is your daughter all right? Still no problems? She's fine. She's been asking about you, actually. She wants to thank you herself. She doesn't need to do that. I know. She wants to anyway. Another pause, longer this time. Miss Mercer, I appreciate you calling, but I don't think it's a good idea for us to stay in contact. What happened Tuesday was just something that needed doing. I don't want anything from you or your company, and I don't want things to be complicated. Mr. Cole, Ethan, please just hear me out for 2 minutes. I really don't think... 2 minutes, please. She heard him exhale, heard background noise, traffic, wind, voices. He was outside somewhere. 2 minutes, he said finally. Vivian stood and walked to the window, gathering her thoughts. I made a mistake. A serious one. I built a company culture around rules and accountability, and I thought that was enough. I thought if everyone followed the standards, everything would work. But I was wrong. Ms. Mercer, Let me finish, please. She took a breath. You did something extraordinary and I punished you for it. Not because you deserved punishment, but because my system is broken. Because I built something that measures performance but doesn't measure character. And when I fired you, I didn't just make a professional mistake. I made a moral one. Ethan didn't respond. I want to offer you your job back. Not the same position, a better one. Director of Safety and Emergency Operations. Executive level, flexible schedule so you can be there for Ava. Better pay, better benefits. A role where your experience and your skills actually matter. Why? Because you deserve it. Because I was wrong. Because... No, Ethan interrupted. Why are you really doing this? You feel guilty? You're worried I'll sue? The detective said something that scared you? Vivian pressed her forehead against the cold glass. All of those things, and also because when I watched that security footage, When I saw you fight for my daughter and then check your watch because you were worried about being late to a job that didn't deserve you, I realized I've been measuring the wrong things for a very long time. The line was quiet except for the sound of wind and distant traffic. I need to think about it, Ethan said finally. Of course. Take whatever time you need. Can I ask you something? Anything. If I say no, if I turn down the offer and walk away, are you going to keep calling, keep trying to fix this? Vivian closed her eyes. Honestly, I don't know. Probably yes. Why? Because I have a daughter who wants to thank the man who saved her life. Because you're exactly the kind of person I should have been looking for when I was building this company. Because, her voice cracked slightly, because I think maybe you're a better person than I am, and I need to figure out how to live with that. Another long silence. I'll think about it, Ethan said again. But Ms. Mercer, don't put me on some kind of pedestal. I'm not a hero. I just did what needed doing, that's all. That's exactly what a hero would say. I have to go. I'll call Detective Ramirez. Thank you. The line went dead. Vivian stood at the window for a long time, watching the city wake up 43 floors below, and wondered what it said about her that she'd needed to lose everything to finally see what mattered. Tuesday afternoon, 1 week after the incident in the alley, Vivian was reviewing contracts when her assistant buzzed through on the intercom. Ms. Mercer, there's an Ethan Cole here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment. Vivian's pulse jumped. Send him in immediately. She stood, smoothed her suit jacket, and tried not to look as nervous as she felt. The door opened. Ethan walked in looking better than he had at the clinic, but not by much. The swelling around his eye had gone down, but the bruising had spread and darkened, turning half his face shades of purple and yellow. His arm was still in a sling. He moved carefully, like his ribs were still reminding him they existed. He wore jeans and a flannel shirt, work boots that had seen better years. He looked completely out of place in her polished executive office. Mr. Cole, Vivian said, please, sit down. I'd rather stand if that's okay. Sitting still hurts. Of course. They faced each other across 10 feet of expensive carpet. I talked to the detective, Ethan said, gave her my statement. She said they're close to identifying the guy. That's good. Yeah. He shifted his weight. I've been thinking about your offer. And? I want to say no. Vivian's stomach dropped. Okay. I want to say no because accepting feels like I'm being rewarded for something I should have done anyway, like I'm cashing in on helping a kid. That doesn't sit right with me. I understand. But I can't say no. Vivian looked up. Ethan's jaw was tight. I have a 6-year-old daughter who needs stability, who needs me to have a job with benefits and regular hours, who needs me to swallow my pride and take the help when it's offered because her well-being matters more than how I feel about accepting charity. It's not charity. It feels like it. It's not, Vivian said firmly. It's an offer based on qualifications and experience that I should have recognized 2 years ago. You're a combat medic, a paramedic. You have skills this company should have been utilizing all along. This isn't charity, it's common sense. Ethan looked at her for a long moment. You really believe that? Yes. Even though we both know the only reason you're offering is because of what happened with your daughter. That's what made me look, but it's not why I'm offering. If you want proof, I'll have HR pull records on every facilities employee we have. You'll see that your performance reviews are exceptional, that you've gone above and beyond your role repeatedly, that you're overqualified for the position you held. I don't need proof. Then what do you need? I need to know this is real, that you're not going to change your mind in 6 months when the guilt wears off, that you're not setting me up for some executive position where I'll fail because I don't have a degree or the right background or whatever. Vivian walked to her desk, picked up the folder Gerald had prepared, and handed it to Ethan. He took it with his good hand and flipped it open. That's the job description, Vivian said. It's designed around your actual skills: emergency response coordination, safety protocol development, staff training, things you've done for years in other contexts. You wouldn't be attending board meetings or managing budgets. You'd be doing what you're good at, keeping people safe. Ethan read through the document slowly, his expression unreadable. The salary is double what I was making. You were being paid half what you were worth. The schedule says core hours 9 to 3 with flexibility for emergency response. So you can drop Ava at school and pick her up. So you can be at parent-teacher conferences and school events. So you can have a life outside this building. Ethan looked up from the paper. Why are you doing this? I told you. No, really. Why? Vivian met his eyes. Because when my daughter came home from school yesterday, she asked me if the brave man who saved her was okay. And I didn't have an answer. Because I fired him. And I don't know where he is, or if he's struggling, or if his daughter has what she needs. And I realized that I've spent 20 years building a company, but I have no idea how to build anything that actually matters. Ethan's expression softened slightly. I'm not a good person, Mr. Cole. I'm efficient, and I'm successful, and I'm very good at making money. But you're good at being human. And I think maybe I need that in my life more than I need another quarterly profit increase. Ethan closed the folder and set it on her desk. I'll take the job on one condition. Name it. No special treatment. No kid gloves because you feel guilty. If I screw up, you hold me accountable the same as anyone else. I don't want to be the guy who's here because the CEO owes him something. Deal. And I want to meet your daughter, to make sure she's really okay. Kids hide trauma, and I want to see with my own eyes that she's processing this in a healthy way. Vivian hadn't expected that. Of course. When? Whenever works for you. Are you free Saturday afternoon? Ethan nodded slowly. Yeah, Saturdays are good. My house, 2 o'clock. I'll text you the address. Okay. They stood there for a moment, something unspoken hanging in the air between them. Thank you, Vivian said quietly, for saying yes, for giving me a chance to make this right. Don't thank me yet. You might regret hiring me. I doubt that. Ethan almost smiled. Almost. You don't know me well enough to be sure. Then I guess I'll find out. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. Miss Mercer? Yes? Your daughter really is brave. The way she ran when I told her to, even though she was scared, most kids freeze. She didn't. You should be proud. I am. Good. He opened the door. I'll see you Saturday. And then he was gone, leaving Vivian alone in her office with a signed job offer on her desk, and the strangest feeling that something in her carefully controlled world had just shifted in a direction she couldn't predict or control. She walked back to the window and looked out at the city, at the millions of people living their lives in the buildings and streets below, and wondered how many of them were carrying burdens no one else could see, how many of them were heroes who didn't know it, how many of them she'd walked past without seeing. Her phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. Thank you. Starting Monday, okay? She typed back, perfect. See you Saturday at 2. Another buzz. Can I bring Ava? She's been asking questions about the girl I helped. Might be good for both of them. Vivian smiled, the first genuine smile in days. Please do. Mia will be thrilled. She set the phone down and went back to work. But for the first time in her professional life, she found herself looking forward to something that had nothing to do with quarterly reports or profit margins or market share. She was looking forward to Saturday afternoon, to 2 little girls meeting under better circumstances, to watching Ethan Cole interact with the daughter he'd sacrificed everything to protect. And maybe, if she was very lucky, to learning how to be the kind of person who measured success in human terms instead of dollar signs. Outside her window, Chicago stretched endlessly in all directions, cold and beautiful and full of people carrying their own quiet battles. And for once, Vivian felt like maybe she was starting to understand what really mattered. Saturday arrived with the kind of autumn weather that made Chicago feel almost forgiving. Clear skies, temperatures in the low 60s, leaves turning gold and red in the trees that lined the residential streets of Lincoln Park. Vivian spent the morning cleaning her house with an intensity that would have alarmed anyone who knew her well enough to recognize anxiety disguised as productivity. She vacuumed rooms that didn't need vacuuming, rearranged pillows on the couch 3 times, and changed her outfit twice before settling on jeans and a cream sweater that felt appropriately casual, but not too casual. Approachable, but not trying too hard. Mia watched her mother's frantic preparations from the kitchen counter, where she was supposedly doing homework but was actually drawing pictures of horses. Mom, you're being weird. I'm not being weird. You vacuumed the living room yesterday, and now you're doing it again. Vivian turned off the vacuum. I want the house to look nice. It always looks nice. You have people who clean it every week. Well, I want it to look extra nice today. Mia set down her colored pencil and studied her mother with the unnerving perceptiveness of an 8-year-old who'd learned to read adult emotions early. You're nervous. I'm not nervous. You are. You keep touching your hair, and you only do that when you're nervous. Like before big meetings. Vivian stopped touching her hair. I just want today to go well. Because the man who saved me is coming? Yes. And his daughter? Yes. Mia smiled, a genuine bright thing that made Vivian's chest tight. I'm excited to meet them, especially her. I want to know what it's like to have a dad who's that brave. Vivian sat down on the couch, abandoning the vacuum. Come here for a second. Mia slid off the kitchen stool and came over, climbing onto the couch beside her mother. What? I need you to understand something about today, Vivian said carefully. Ethan, Mr. Cole, he's going to be working at my company now, and his daughter Ava, she's been through some hard things. Her mom died a few years ago. It's just her and her dad. Mia's eyes went wide. Her mom died? Yes. So she might be shy or sad, or she might not want to talk much. And that's okay. We're just going to be kind and let her be however she needs to be. Okay? Okay. Mia thought about this. Mom? Yeah, baby? Is that why Mr. Cole is so brave? Because he had to be for her? Vivian felt something crack open in her chest. Maybe. I think some people are just born that way. But yeah, maybe losing someone makes you fight harder for the people you have left. Were you scared when you thought something bad might happen to me? More scared than I've ever been in my life. Mia leaned against her mother's shoulder. I'm okay, though. Because of him. I know. And we're going to tell him thank you, both of us, together. The doorbell rang at exactly 2 o'clock. Vivian stood, smoothed her sweater one more time, and went to answer it with Mia right behind her. When she opened the door, Ethan Cole stood on her front porch looking uncomfortable in clean jeans and a dark blue button-down shirt that was probably the nicest thing he owned. The bruising on his face had faded to yellowish green but was still visible. His arm was out of the sling, but he held it carefully. Beside him, holding his hand with a grip that looked almost fierce, was a little girl with dark braids identical to the ones Vivian had seen in the security footage. She wore a purple dress with leggings and sneakers that lit up when she walked. Her eyes were huge and solemn. Miss Mercer, Ethan said, this is my daughter Ava. It's nice to meet you, Ava. Please, come in. Both of you. They stepped inside and Vivian closed the door behind them. For a moment, everyone just stood in the entryway, unsure how to proceed. Then Mia stepped forward. Hi, she said to Ava. I'm Mia. You're the girl whose dad saved me. Ava looked up at her father, then back at Mia. You're the girl my dad got hurt for. I didn't mean for him to get hurt. I know, the bad man hurt him. Not you. The two girls stared at each other for a beat, some kind of understanding passing between them that didn't require adult translation. Do you want to see my room? Mia asked. I have a whole collection of stuffed animals, and some of them are really weird. Ava looked up at Ethan again, seeking permission. Go ahead, he said quietly. I'll be right down here if you need me. The girls disappeared up the stairs, their voices fading into the second floor, and suddenly Vivian was alone with Ethan Cole in her foyer. Can I get you something to drink? She asked. Coffee? Water? Water would be good. She led him through the house to the kitchen, hyper-aware of how he was seeing her space, the marble countertops, the professional-grade appliances, the original artwork on the walls. The house was beautiful, and she'd worked hard to afford it, but right now it felt excessive and cold. She poured 2 glasses of water and handed him one. Thank you for coming, she said. I know this is probably awkward. A little. He took a sip. Nice place. It's too big for 2 people, but I bought it thinking I'd fill it eventually. That hasn't happened. Life doesn't always go according to plan. No, it doesn't. She leaned against the counter. How are you feeling? The ribs? Better. Still sore but healing. I can breathe without wanting to die, so that's progress. And Ava? How's she doing with everything? Ethan set down his glass and looked toward the stairs, where the sound of the girls' voices drifted down. She's scared I'm going to get hurt again. She's been having nightmares, wakes up crying and asking if I'm okay. I tell her I am, but I don't think she believes me. That's normal after trauma, even secondary trauma. I know. I've seen it before in other contexts. Doesn't make it easier when it's your own kid. He rubbed his face with his good hand. She asked me why I fought the bad man. I told her because someone needed help. She asked what would happen to her if I died doing that. I didn't have a good answer. Vivian's throat tightened. What did you tell her? The truth. That I don't know. That her aunt would take care of her, but it wouldn't be the same. But that I'm scared of that too. But I can't be the kind of person who walks past a kid in trouble. That some things you just have to do even when they're dangerous. That's a hard conversation to have with a 6-year-old. Yes, yeah. He looked at her directly. But she needs to understand that the world isn't safe and her dad isn't invincible. I'd rather she know that now than learn it the hard way later. Upstairs, something thumped and both girls laughed. High, clear sounds that cut through the heaviness in the kitchen. Mia seems good, Ethan said. You said she's been asking about me? Constantly. She wanted to find you and thank you herself. She's been worried that you were badly hurt and that it was somehow her fault. It wasn't. I know. But she's 8. 8-year-olds don't always process cause and effect the way adults do. They stood in silence for a moment, listening to the sounds of the girls playing above them. I start Monday, Ethan said finally. Your assistant sent me onboarding paperwork, benefits enrollment, direct deposit forms, all that. Good. I've set up an office for you on the 40th floor. Nothing fancy, but it has a window and a door that closes. You'll report directly to me for the first few months while we figure out exactly what the role looks like in practice. Ms. Mercer? Vivian. Please. We're in my kitchen. You can use my first name. Vivian, then. He shifted his weight, uncomfortable. I need to say something, and I need you to hear it without getting defensive. Okay, I'm grateful for this job. I need it. But I'm not grateful for what happened to get me here. Your daughter shouldn't have had to be attacked for you to see that your company was wasting my potential, and I shouldn't have had to save someone's life to be treated like I matter. Vivian felt the words land like physical blows. You're right. I don't want special treatment going forward. I want to be judged on my work. And if this position doesn't work out, if I'm not good at it, I want you to tell me honestly instead of keeping me around because you feel guilty. I will. And I need you to know that I'm doing this for Ava, not for you. Not because I forgive you for firing me, but because my daughter deserves stability and this job provides that. I understand. Do you? Because from where I'm standing, this feels like charity dressed up as opportunity. And I've spent my whole life refusing charity. Vivian set down her water glass and looked at him directly. You want honesty? Fine. You're right. I am offering you this job because of what happened with Mia. That's the catalyst. But the opportunity is real because your qualifications are real. You have skills we need. Skills I should have recognized years ago, but didn't because I was too busy measuring performance metrics to actually see people. That's a pretty speech. It's not a speech. It's the truth. She crossed her arms. You think I don't know this is awkward? You think I don't know you have every reason to tell me to go to hell? I fired you for being 16 minutes late after you saved my daughter's life. I humiliated you in front of a boardroom full of people. I was cruel and short-sighted and wrong. So why should I believe this is different? Because I'm telling you that I was wrong. Because I'm trying to fix it. Because... She stopped, struggling for words. Because when I watched that security footage, when I saw you check your watch in that alley, I realized I've built my entire career on a foundation that doesn't account for people like you. People who do the right thing when it costs them everything. And that foundation is broken. Ethan studied her face for a long moment. What happened to you that made you this way? What? You're smart, successful. You've built something impressive, but you're also completely disconnected from what actually matters. What happened that made you like this? Vivian felt her defenses slam into place like armor. That's not relevant. Isn't it? You're asking me to trust you, to work for you, to believe this is real, but you're still hiding behind professional distance and carefully constructed answers. If you want me to buy in, I need to know who you actually are. You don't need to know anything about my personal history to do your job. Maybe not, but I need to know if you're capable of change, and I can't tell that if you won't let me see past the CEO persona. They stared at each other across the kitchen, the air between them charged with something Vivian couldn't quite name. Upstairs, the girls laughed again. Vivian exhaled slowly. My father built Mercer Capital from nothing. He was brilliant and ruthless, and he taught me that success required sacrifice, that emotions were weakness, that the only things that mattered were results and reputation. He died when I was 25 and left me a company that was successful but soulless. I've spent 11 years trying to prove I could run it better than he did, trying to prove I was strong enough. And somewhere along the way, I became exactly like him. That's not an excuse. I know, but it's an explanation, and it's more than I've told anyone in years. Ethan's expression softened slightly. He sounds like he was hard to live with. He was impossible to live with. He missed every school event, every birthday, every moment that didn't directly contribute to the bottom line. My mother left him when I was 12, and I stayed because I thought maybe if I was good enough, perfect enough, he'd see me. He never did. He just saw an employee. And now you do the same thing to the people who work for you. Yes? The admission hurt. I do. I did. I'm trying to change that. Change is hard. I'm aware. And it takes more than one good deed to undo years of damage. I know that too. Ethan picked up his water glass and took another drink. Okay. Okay, what? Okay, I'll give you a chance. Not because I trust you yet, but because I think maybe you actually want to be better. And that's worth something. Before Vivian could respond, the girls came thundering down the stairs, their footsteps loud and chaotic in a way that made the house feel alive. Mia appeared first, dragging Ava by the hand. Mom, can Ava stay for dinner? Please, we're playing mermaids and we're not done yet. Vivian looked at Ethan. Is that okay with you? Depends on what you're serving. I was planning to order pizza. Ava's eyes lit up. Pizza? Ethan smiled, a real smile that transformed his entire face despite the fading bruises. Pizza works. 2 hours later, they sat around Vivian's dining table, surrounded by pizza boxes and dirty plates, and the comfortable chaos of children who'd decided they were friends. Ava had come out of her shell completely, telling elaborate stories about her school and her favorite books and the neighbor's cat who was apparently evil. Mia listened with rapt attention, asking questions and contributing her own stories. Ethan and Vivian sat at opposite ends of the table, ostensibly supervising but mostly just watching their daughters interact. Ava doesn't usually warm up to people this fast, Ethan said quietly. She's been pretty closed off since her mom died. Mia's the same way lately. She's been having trouble sleeping since the incident, but right now she looks happy. Kids are resilient. I hope so. Ava turned to Vivian suddenly. Ms. Mercer. You can call me Vivian, sweetheart. Vivian, did my dad really get fired for helping Mia? The table went silent. Ethan tensed. Ava, we talked about this. I know, but I want to understand. Mia said her mom fired you, and I don't understand why helping someone would make you lose your job. Vivian met Ava's direct gaze and decided the child deserved an honest answer. Yes, I fired your dad because he was late to work. I didn't know at the time that he was late because he'd just saved Mia, but even if I had known, I probably would have made the same decision because I had very strict rules about punctuality. That's a stupid rule. Ava, Ethan warned. Well, it is. Dad got hurt helping someone, and he got fired. That's not fair. You're right, Vivian said. It wasn't fair. I made a mistake, a big one, and I'm trying to fix it now by giving your dad a better job where the rules make more sense. Ava studied her for a long moment. Are you going to fire him again if he has to help someone else? No. In fact, his new job is specifically about helping people and keeping them safe. So if he's late because he's doing his job, that's exactly what he's supposed to be doing. Okay. Ava seemed satisfied with this. But you should know that my dad is really good at helping people. He helped a lady who fell down once, and he helped our neighbor fix his car, and he helps me with my homework even when he's tired. So if you fire him again, you're making another mistake. Mia giggled. Ethan looked mortified. Vivian felt something warm spread through her chest. Duly noted. I'll try not to make any more mistakes with your dad. Good. The conversation moved on to safer topics: school, favorite foods, whether cats or dogs were better pets. But Vivian couldn't stop thinking about what Ava had said. You should know that my dad is really good at helping people. The simple, fierce loyalty in those words. The complete conviction that her father was someone worth fighting for. When had Mia last defended Vivian that way? When had Vivian given her daughter reason to? After dinner, the girls went back upstairs to play while Vivian and Ethan cleaned up the kitchen. They worked in comfortable silence, falling into an easy rhythm, Vivian loading the dishwasher, Ethan wiping down the table and counters. "Your daughter is amazing," Vivian said. "She has her moments." "No, I mean it. She's smart and funny, and she's not afraid to speak her mind. She gets that from her mother." Ethan's voice went quiet. Sarah was like that. Couldn't stand injustice. Would argue with anyone if she thought they were wrong. Didn't matter who they were. "How long has it been?" 3 years in December. Cancer. Started in her lungs, spread everywhere. She was sick for 11 months. Fought like hell, but it wasn't enough. "I'm sorry." "Yeah, me too." He folded the dish towel and set it on the counter. Ava doesn't remember much about her. She was only 3 when Sarah died. Sometimes I catch her staring at photos like she's trying to remember, and it kills me. "Is that why you left the fire department? To be home more?" "Partially. Sarah made me promise before she died that I'd put Ava first, that I wouldn't let the job consume me the way it had started to. So I found something with better hours and less danger, and I've been doing that ever since." "Do you miss it? The paramedic work?" Ethan was quiet for a moment. "Every single day. But I miss Sarah more. And Ava needs a dad who comes home at night, not one who dies in a fire or gets shot on a scene. So I made my choice." "That must have been hard." "Hardest thing I've ever done besides watching my wife die." He looked at Vivian directly. "But you don't get to choose between hard and easy. You get to choose between different kinds of hard. And being there for Ava was less hard than losing her too." Vivian thought about her own choices, the years she'd spent prioritizing work over Mia, telling herself it was necessary, telling herself she was building something important. What was she building, really? And for who? "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Sure." "When you saw Mia being attacked, in that split second when you had to decide whether to intervene, were you scared?" "Terrified." "But you did it anyway." "I did it because I was scared, because I kept thinking, what if that was Ava? What if someone walked past her when she needed help? I couldn't be that person. I can't ever be that person. I think most people would have called 911 and kept walking. Then most people are wrong." The simple conviction in his voice made something shift in Vivian's chest. This was a man who'd lost everything: his wife, his career, his financial stability. And he still believed in doing the right thing, still fought for strangers, still stood up when standing up cost him. She'd built an empire, and she'd never fought for anything except market share. Upstairs, Ava's voice rang out. "Dad, can we stay longer, please?" Ethan checked his watch. "It's almost 7. We should probably get going." "Can we do this again?" Vivian asked before she could stop herself. The girls seem to really enjoy each other's company. "Yeah, they do." Ethan hesitated. "Are you sure that's a good idea? Me being your employee and us spending time together outside work? People might talk." "Let them talk." "Easy for you to say. You're the CEO. I'm the new guy who got hired under unusual circumstances. If people think there's something—" He stopped. "I just don't want this to get complicated." "It's already complicated, but the girls are happy, and honestly, I think we could both use friends who understand what we've been through." "Friends? Is that so impossible?" Ethan looked at her for a long moment. "No, I guess not." They called the girls down. Ava came reluctantly, dragging her feet, asking if they could come back tomorrow. "Not tomorrow," Ethan said, "but soon." Mia hugged Ava goodbye at the door, a fierce squeeze that Ava returned with equal intensity. "Thank you for saving me," Mia said quietly. "Your dad is really brave." "I know," Ava whispered back. "Your mom is nice, even though she made a mistake." Mia giggled. Vivian walked them to the door. Ethan paused on the threshold. "Thank you for today," he said. "Ava needed this." "So did Mia. So did I, if I'm being honest." "I'll see you Monday morning, 9 o'clock?" 9 o'clock. Your office is 4012. Security will have your new ID badge ready at the front desk." "Okay." He started to leave, then turned back. "Vivian?" "Yeah?" "I meant what I said earlier, about giving you a chance, but I also meant the part about needing honesty. If this doesn't work, If I'm not what you need, tell me. Don't string me along because you feel guilty. I won't. Good. She watched them walk to Ethan's car, a 10-year-old Honda with a dent in the rear panel and a child's car seat in the back. He buckled Ava in carefully, checking the straps twice, then got in the driver's seat. The car pulled away, and Vivian stood in her doorway until the taillights disappeared around the corner. Mia appeared beside her. I like them. Me too. Can they come back next week? Maybe. Mom? Yeah, baby? I'm glad you gave him a job. He deserves it. Vivian put her arm around her daughter's shoulders. Yeah, he does. They went inside and closed the door against the autumn night. Vivian helped Mia get ready for bed, reading her 2 chapters instead of 1, staying longer than usual when Mia asked her to. Later, alone in her own room, Vivian stood at the window looking out at the city lights and thought about second chances and redemption and whether people could really change. She'd spent her whole life believing that success was measured in profit margins and quarterly reports. That strength meant never showing weakness, that leadership required distance. But Ethan Cole had shown her something different. Strength that came from vulnerability, leadership through service, success measured in lives saved and children protected and promises kept to dying spouses. She didn't know if she could become that kind of person, didn't know if she could undo decades of conditioning and cold calculation. But watching Ava defend her father with such fierce certainty, watching Mia laugh for the first time since the attack, watching Ethan move through the world with quiet integrity despite everything he'd lost. Maybe it was worth trying. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Ava wanted me to tell you that you make good pizza choices, also that you're not as scary as she thought you'd be. Vivian smiled and saved the number under Ethan's name. Tell her thank you, and that she's welcome back anytime. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. She also wants to know if Mia can come to the park with us next Saturday. There's a playground near our place. Nothing fancy, but the girls might enjoy it. Vivian looked at the message for a long time, thinking about what acceptance meant, what friendship required, what it would mean to step into Ethan's world instead of demanding he always come into hers. Send me the address. We'll be there. The reply came quickly. 2 p.m., okay? Perfect. She set down her phone and went to bed, and for the first time in weeks, she fell asleep without running through work scenarios in her mind, without planning her next power move, without calculating the angles. She fell asleep thinking about a little girl in a purple dress defending her father, and a man who checked his watch in an alley because even bleeding and battered, he still tried to do the right thing, and what it might mean to rebuild her life around something more important than success. Outside her window, Chicago hummed and glowed and breathed, full of people carrying their own burdens and fighting their own battles. And somewhere in Bridgeport, a widowed father was tucking his daughter into bed and telling her stories about her mother and trying to be enough. And Vivian Mercer, CEO of Mercer Capital, architect of efficiency, believer in ruthless standards, lay in her expensive bed in her too-big house and wondered if maybe, just maybe, she'd finally found something worth changing for. Monday morning came too fast and too slow at the same time. Vivian arrived at the office at 6:30, earlier than usual, and spent the first hour preparing for Ethan's first day in ways that had nothing to do with business and everything to do with wanting him to feel welcome. She stocked his office with basic supplies, made sure his computer was set up properly, left a welcome packet on his desk that she'd assembled herself instead of delegating to HR. At 8:45, she was back in her own office, pretending to review emails when she was actually watching the elevator bay through her glass walls, waiting. Ethan stepped out at 8:53, wearing dark slacks and a white dress shirt that looked new, his hair still damp from a shower. The bruising on his face had faded enough that most people probably wouldn't notice unless they were looking for it. He walked with purpose, but she could still see the careful way he held himself, ribs not quite healed. He stopped at reception, got his badge from Marcus, who'd been briefed to expect him, then headed toward the 40th floor. Vivian forced herself to wait 15 minutes before going to check on him. She found him standing in the middle of office 4012, looking around at the space with an expression she couldn't quite read. The office wasn't large, maybe 12 by 15 feet, but it had a window overlooking the Chicago River and a desk that was significantly better than the metal one he'd probably had in the basement facilities office. Too much? Vivian asked from the doorway. Ethan turned. It's fine. Good. I just, I'm not used to having a door that closes. Or a window. You've earned both, she stepped inside. How are you feeling? First day nerves? Something like that. He gestured at the desk where several binders sat stacked. I've been reading through the safety protocols you left me. Some of this stuff is outdated. The evacuation procedures don't account for the construction happening on floors 30 through 32, and the emergency contact list has people who don't work here anymore. Then fix it. That's literally your job now. Just like that? I can just rewrite company policy? You can draft recommendations and send them to me for approval. But yes, essentially, you're the expert. I trust your judgment. Ethan sat down in his chair, testing it, then looked up at her. This is going to take some getting used to. What is? Being treated like I know what I'm doing. The words landed heavier than he probably meant them to. Vivian leaned against the doorframe. How long were you in the basement? 2 years? 3 months? You know that. It's in my file. And in all that time, did anyone ask your opinion on safety protocols, emergency procedures, anything beyond which cleaning supplies to order? Ethan's jaw tightened. No. That was my failure, the company's failure. We had someone with your background and we had you fixing leaky faucets. I didn't mind the work. Maybe you should have. What's that supposed to mean? Vivian straightened. It means you're allowed to want more than you had. You're allowed to be angry that you were overlooked. You don't have to be gracious about it. I'm not angry. You should be. Why? So you can feel worse about what you did? The question caught her off guard. No. So you can stop acting like you're grateful for something you deserved all along. Ethan stood, his expression hardening. You don't get to tell me how to feel about this. You fired me. You gave me the job back because you felt guilty. Those are facts. How I process them is my business. Fair enough? They stared at each other across the small office, tension crackling in the air between them. Ethan broke first, exhaling slowly. Sorry, that came out harsher than I meant. Don't apologize. You're right. I don't get to tell you how to feel. I'm trying to make this work. To not be bitter about how it started. But it's hard walking in here knowing that none of this would exist if your daughter hadn't been in that alley. I know. And it's hard watching people look at me like they're trying to figure out what I did to deserve this office when they've been working their asses off for years. Have people been saying things? Not to my face, but I hear them talking. They think there's something going on between us, that I'm getting special treatment because He stopped. Never mind. Because we're what? Forget it. Ethan. He rubbed his face with both hands. They think we're sleeping together. That's why you hired me. That's why I got an executive-level position with no experience in this industry. Vivian felt anger flash hot in her chest. Who said that? Does it matter? Yes, because it's inappropriate and untrue, and I won't tolerate that kind of talk in my company. Vivian, you can't fire everyone who gossips. That's not how workplaces work. I can make it very clear that baseless rumors have consequences. And prove their point? That I get special protection because of our relationship? He held up a hand before she could respond. I'm not saying you would. I'm saying that's how it'll look. So just leave it alone. I can handle some gossip. You shouldn't have to. Welcome to being the new guy. He sat back down, his shoulders tense. Look, I knew this would be complicated. I accepted the job anyway because I need it. But I need you to understand that I'm going to have to work twice as hard as anyone else to prove I belong here. And I need you to let me do that without interfering. Vivian wanted to argue, wanted to storm through the office and find whoever was spreading rumors and make an example of them. But Ethan was right. Anything she did would only make it worse. Okay, she said finally. But if it gets worse, if anyone crosses a line, you tell me. Deal. A knock on the door made them both turn. Gerald stood in the hallway, looking uncomfortable. Sorry to interrupt. Vivian, the Henderson merger team is waiting in the conference room. I'll be right there. She looked back at Ethan. I have meetings all morning, but my assistant has your schedule. You're meeting with facilities management at 10, building security at 11, and HR sent over a list of mandatory training sessions you need to complete this week. Got it. She started to leave, then paused. Ethan, for what it's worth, you do belong here. He didn't respond, just turned back to the binders on his desk. Vivian walked away, feeling like she'd somehow made things worse instead of better. The morning passed in a blur of meetings and conference calls. Vivian tried to focus, but kept thinking about Ethan sitting in his office, dealing with whispers and speculation, trying to prove himself to people who'd already decided he didn't belong. At noon, she ordered lunch to be delivered to his office. A sandwich from the deli he used to eat at when he worked in the basement. A small gesture that she hoped said, "I see you without making things weird." Her assistant buzzed through at 12:30. "Miss Mercer, there's a situation developing on the 40th floor. Security called. There's been an incident involving Mr. Cole." Vivian's blood went cold. "What kind of incident?" "I don't have details. They just said you should come down." She was out of her chair and moving before her assistant finished talking. She took the stairs instead of waiting for the elevator, her heels echoing in the concrete stairwell, and emerged on the 40th floor to find a small crowd gathered near the break room. She pushed through. "What happened? Where's Ethan?" Marcus, the head of security, turned to her. "Miss Mercer, there was an altercation. Mr. Cole is fine, but where is he?" Marcus pointed toward the break room. Vivian pushed past him and stopped dead in the doorway. Ethan sat on the floor with his back against the wall, pressing a towel full of ice against his jaw. A woman Vivian recognized as Jessica Crane from accounting knelt beside him, and standing nearby, looking pale and scared, was a young man named Derek something or other from the IT department. "What the hell happened?" Vivian demanded. Everyone started talking at once. She held up a hand. "One at a time. Marcus?" Marcus stepped forward. "From what I can piece together, Mr. Cole was in the break room when Derek here made a comment. Mr. Cole responded. Derek took a swing at him." Vivian turned to Derek, who looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. "You hit him?" "I didn't mean to. I didn't think he'd..." "What did you say to him?" Derek's face went red. "Nothing. Just, we were talking and..." "He called him the CEO's charity case," Jessica said quietly. "Said Ethan was only here because he was sleeping with you and that everyone knew it." The room went silent. Vivian looked at Ethan, who wouldn't meet her eyes. "Is that true?" "More or less," Ethan said quietly. "And you hit him?" "No, Derek swung first. I ducked. He hit the wall." Ethan gestured at Derek's right hand, which was already swelling. "I'm the one who got him ice." "Then why do you have ice on your face?" "I hit the wall too, on the way down. Ribs are still healing and I moved wrong trying to get out of the way. Knocked my face into the counter." Vivian turned to Derek. "You're fired. Get your things and leave the building within the hour." "Ms. Mercer, I didn't mean..." "You physically assaulted another employee based on unfounded rumors. There's no version of this where you keep your job. Leave. Now." Derek looked like he might argue, saw the expression on her face, and left without another word. Vivian looked at the small crowd still lingering in the hallway. "Everyone else, back to work. This is over." They dispersed quickly. Marcus started to say something, but Vivian cut him off. "Write up the incident report and send it to HR. Make sure it's clear that Derek initiated physical contact and Mr. Cole defended himself." "Yes, ma'am. Us." When the hallway cleared, Vivian knelt down beside Ethan. "Let me see." He lowered the ice. A red mark was blooming along his jawline where he'd hit the counter, and he was breathing carefully, one hand pressed against his side. "Did you re-injure your ribs?" "Probably just aggravated them. I'm fine." "You're not fine." She looked at Jessica. "Call his doctor. Get him an appointment this afternoon." "Vivian, I don't need..." "That wasn't a request." She stood and offered him her hand. He hesitated, then took it, letting her help pull him to his feet. He swayed slightly and she caught his arm. "Steady." "I'm okay." "You're going to the doctor." "I have meetings this afternoon." "I'll reschedule them." They walked slowly to his office, Vivian keeping a hand on his arm in case he stumbled. She helped him sit in his chair, then closed the door and leaned against his desk. "I'm sorry," she said. "For what? You didn't punch me." "For putting you in a position where this could happen. For not shutting down the rumors earlier when you told me they existed." Ethan adjusted the ice on his jaw. "Not your fault people are assholes. Derek worked here for 3 years with no disciplinary issues. I turned him into someone who threw a punch at work because I created a situation that looked inappropriate." "You gave me a job."
That's not inappropriate. The optics are terrible and you know it. Fired employee gets rehired at 10 times his previous salary days after saving the CEO's daughter. Of course, people are going to talk. So what do you want to do? Fire me again to make them happy? No, I want to figure out how to make this work without destroying your reputation in the process.
Ethan set down the ice and looked at her directly. You can't control what people think. And honestly, I don't care what they think. I care about doing my job well. I care about taking care of Ava. The rest is just noise. That's easy to say when you're not the one being called names. I've been called worse in worse places. I'll survive some office gossip. Vivian crossed her arms. This isn't sustainable. If people think there's something inappropriate happening between us, they won't respect you as a colleague. They won't take your safety recommendations seriously. They'll undermine you at every turn. Then I'll prove them wrong by being better at my job than they expect. And if that's not enough, then it's not enough. But I'm not going to let their opinions dictate how I live my life or whether I accept opportunities I've earned. The conviction in his voice made something shift in Vivian's chest. He wasn't backing down, wasn't apologizing for existing, wasn't shrinking himself to make others comfortable. When did you get so stubborn? She asked. I learned from the best. My wife used to say I was too nice, too willing to accommodate. She'd tell me to stop making myself small for people who wouldn't do the same for me. He smiled slightly. I'm still working on it, but I'm getting better. She sounds like she was smart. She was the smartest person I ever met, and the bravest. She fought cancer like it was a war she could win through sheer force of will. It didn't work, but she never stopped trying. His voice went quiet. She made me promise I wouldn't teach Ava to settle, that I'd show her how to take up space in the world even when people tried to make her feel like she shouldn't. That's a good promise. Yeah, so I'm not going to quit because Derek is an idiot, and I'm not going to hide in this office afraid of what people might say. I'm going to do my job and let the work speak for itself. Vivian's phone buzzed. A text from her assistant. Doctor's office can see Mr. Cole at 2 p.m., confirmed appointment. She showed Ethan the screen. You're going. Fine, but I'm coming back after. I have the security meeting at 4 and I need to review their current protocols before then. The meeting can wait. The building has outdated emergency procedures that could get people killed in an actual crisis. The meeting can't wait. They stared at each other, neither willing to back down. You're impossible, Vivian said. You're controlling. I'm concerned. I'm capable of taking care of myself. Evidence suggests otherwise, given that you've been injured twice in 2 weeks. Once. I got injured once. Today was just maintenance on existing damage. Despite everything, Vivian almost laughed. You're actually serious right now. Completely. He stood, moving carefully. I'm going to the doctor because you'll make my life miserable if I don't. But then I'm coming back and doing my job because that's what you hired me for. The doctor's appointment revealed what Ethan had already suspected. He'd aggravated the healing ribs, but hadn't rebroken anything. He came back to the office at 3:30, wearing a more substantial brace under his shirt and carrying a prescription for stronger pain medication that he had no intention of filling. The security meeting went well. Better than well, actually. Ethan walked through the current evacuation procedures, pointed out 17 critical flaws, and proposed solutions that were practical and implementable. The security team listened with genuine respect, asked intelligent questions, and by the end of the meeting, they were treating him like an expert instead of an interloper. Vivian sat in on the meeting from the back of the room, ostensibly there to observe, but really there to make sure no one gave Ethan grief. She needn't have worried. He commanded the room with quiet confidence, speaking from experience instead of theory, and by the time he finished his presentation, everyone in that conference room understood why he'd been hired. After everyone else left, Vivian walked over to where Ethan was gathering his notes. That was impressive, she said. It was basic safety assessment, nothing complicated. It was 17 fixes to problems we didn't know we had. You potentially just saved lives. Ethan shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. Just doing my job. You've been here one day, and you've already made this building safer. That's not just doing your job. That's excelling at it. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and something passed between them that neither of them had words for. Respect, maybe. Understanding. A recognition that they were both trying to be better than they'd been. Thank you, he said finally. for believing I could do this. Thank you for proving me right. They walked out together, and for the first time since this whole complicated situation started, it felt almost normal. The rest of the week passed in a blur of meetings and projects and slow, careful progress. Ethan threw himself into his work with an intensity that impressed everyone who worked with him. He overhauled the emergency procedures, conducted safety audits on every floor, and found gaps in the building's fire suppression system that had been overlooked for years. By Friday, people had stopped whispering about how he'd gotten hired and started asking for his input on safety issues. The transformation was gradual but undeniable. Friday evening, Vivian was packing up her office when her phone rang. Ethan's name on the screen. "Hey," she answered. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, just wanted to confirm tomorrow. Park at 2, right?" "Right. Mia's been talking about it all week." "Ava too. She made me promise we'd stop for hot chocolate after." "We can do that." A pause. "Vivian?" "Yeah." "This week was hard, but it was good. Thank you for not giving up on me when things got messy. You made it easy. You did good work. I had help. You didn't need as much as you think." Another pause, longer this time. "I'll see you tomorrow." "See you tomorrow." Saturday arrived with perfect autumn weather again. Sunny, cool, the kind of day that made Chicago feel like the best city in the world instead of a place that would try to freeze you solid in 3 months. Vivian and Mia drove to Bridgeport, following the GPS to a neighborhood park that was nothing like the manicured green spaces near Vivian's house. This park was small and worn, with playground equipment that had seen better decades, and a basketball court where the pavement was cracked, but kids played anyway. Families gathered on benches, speaking Spanish and Polish and Arabic, and the air smelled like grilled meat from someone's cookout nearby. Ethan and Ava were already there, sitting on a bench near the playground. Ava saw them first and jumped up, waving frantically. "Mia, over here!" The girls ran to each other like they'd been separated for months instead of a week. They disappeared onto the playground equipment immediately, their laughter carrying across the park. Vivian sat down beside Ethan on the bench. "Nice spot." "It's not much, but it's close to home and Ava loves it." "Mia seems to love it too." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching their daughters play. Ava was showing Mia how to climb to the top of the wooden castle structure, and Mia was teaching Ava some kind of hand-clapping game that involved complicated rhythms. "How are the ribs?" Vivian asked. "Better. The brace helps." "And the gossip at work?" "Died down mostly. Turns out people lose interest when there's nothing scandalous actually happening." "I'm glad." "Me too." He stretched his legs out. "Ava's therapist says she's doing better, still having nightmares but less frequently. She says having Mia as a friend helps, gives her someone to talk to who understands what happened." Mia's therapist said the same thing about Ava. "I think they're good for each other." "Yeah." Ethan watched the girls playing. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Sure." "Why did you really give me the job? And don't say it's because I'm qualified. We both know there are 100 qualified people you could have hired." Vivian thought about how to answer that honestly. "Because when I watched you in that alley, when I saw you check your watch even though you were bleeding, I realized I'd been measuring success wrong my entire life. I'd built a company full of people who follow rules and hit targets and make money. But I didn't have anyone who would risk everything to do the right thing. And I wanted that. I needed that. That's a lot of pressure to put on one employee. I know. And I'm not saying I hired you to be some kind of moral compass for the company. I'm saying I hired you because you reminded me that there are things more important than profit margins." "Like what?" "Like integrity, like courage, like being the kind of person who saves strangers and takes care of their elderly neighbors and shows up even when showing up costs them everything." Ethan was quiet for a long moment. "I'm not a saint, Vivian. I'm just a guy trying to take care of his kid and make it through the day." "I know, but you're doing it with more grace than most people could manage." "Grace," he laughed quietly. "Sarah used to say that. She'd tell me I had too much grace for people who didn't deserve it, that I should be angrier about the things that happened to me. Maybe she was right. Maybe. But anger takes energy I don't have. I'd rather spend it on Ava." They watched the girls for a while longer. Mia had convinced Ava to go down the slide, and Ava was at the top looking terrified but determined. "You're a good father," Vivian said. "I'm trying to be." "No, you are. Ava is lucky to have you.
I'm the lucky one. She's the only thing that kept me going after Sarah died. The only reason I got out of bed. If I didn't have her... He stopped, his voice rough. I don't know where I'd be. Vivian reached over and squeezed his hand briefly. Just a moment of connection, of understanding. He squeezed back, then let go. Come on, he said, standing. I promised hot chocolate. There's a place 2 blocks from here that makes the good kind with real whipped cream.
They gathered the girls and walked through the neighborhood, past brick buildings and corner stores and people sitting on their porches watching the world go by. Ava held her father's hand and told Mia elaborate stories about the different houses they passed, and Mia listened with rapt attention. The hot chocolate place was called Roses, and it was tiny, just 6 tables and a counter where an older woman greeted Ethan by name. Ethan! And who are these beautiful girls? Rosa, this is Ava's friend Mia and her mom Vivian. Ladies, this is Rosa, best hot chocolate in Chicago. In the world, Rosa corrected with a wink. Sit, sit. I'll bring you the special. They squeezed into a corner table, the girls on one side, Ethan and Vivian on the other. Rosa brought 4 mugs of hot chocolate topped with mountains of whipped cream and a plate of cookies that she insisted were on the house. The girls demolished the cookies while the adults sipped their drinks, and for a while everything was perfect in a simple, uncomplicated way that Vivian had forgotten was possible. Mom, Mia said suddenly, can I ask you something? Of course. Why don't we ever come to places like this? Near our house, everything is fancy and expensive. This is more fun. Vivian felt her face flush. I don't know. I guess I just never thought to explore different neighborhoods. We should do it more. Ava says there's a really good taco place near her school and a bookstore that has a cat. Ethan smiled. She's not wrong. The cat's name is Senor Whiskers, and he's very judgmental about book choices. Can we go there? Mia asked. Please? Vivian looked at Ethan. He shrugged. I'm free if you are. 20 minutes later, they were walking into a bookstore called Stories and Tales, where a massive orange tabby cat sat in the window like a furry bouncer. The girls squealed and ran over to pet him while Ethan and Vivian browsed the shelves. This is nice, Vivian said quietly. I can't remember the last time I just wandered through a bookstore with no agenda. You should do it more often. I should do a lot of things more often. She picked up a book, read the back cover, set it down. Ethan watched her with an expression she couldn't quite read. What? She asked. Nothing. Just, you seem different today. Relaxed. Is that good or bad? Good. Definitely good. Their eyes met and held for a moment longer than necessary. Vivian felt something warm unfold in her chest, something that had nothing to do with gratitude or guilt, and everything to do with the man standing next to her in a bookstore on a Saturday afternoon, teaching her how to be present. Ethan! Dad! Ava's voice cut through whatever Vivian had been about to say. Mia found a book about mermaids. Can we get it? The moment broke. Ethan turned to his daughter. Is it for you or for Mia? For both of us. We can share. He pulled out his wallet, but Vivian stopped him. Let me. Consider it a thank you for introducing us to Roses. You don't have to. I want to. They bought the book and walked back to the park where their cars were parked. The sun was starting to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange that made even the worn playground equipment look beautiful. Today was really nice, Vivian said as they reached her car. Thank you for sharing your neighborhood with us. Anytime. Ethan glanced at the girls, who were already planning their next play date in excited whispers. They're really good together. They are. So are we, I think. As friends. Vivian smiled. Yeah, we are. Ava tugged on Ethan's hand. Dad, I'm tired. Okay, sweetheart. Let's get you home. They said their goodbyes, Ava hugging Mia, Mia hugging Ava, promises to see each other soon, and got into their respective cars. On the drive home, Mia chattered about the day while Vivian drove and listened and felt something that might have been contentment settling into her bones. When they got home, Mia went upstairs to read her new book, and Vivian stood in her too big house and thought about the difference between where she lived and where Ethan lived, between the life she'd built and the life that was waiting for her if she was brave enough to reach for it. Her phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. Ava wanted me to tell you that today was the best day she's had since her mom died, so thank you for that. Vivian's throat tightened as she typed back, "Tell her it was one of the best days I've had in a long time, too." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Same here. She stared at those 2 words for a long time, understanding what they meant and what they didn't mean, and all the complicated space in between. This thing between them, this friendship, this connection, this slow, careful building of trust, it was good. It was real. And it was terrifying because Vivian hadn't let anyone this close in years, and she'd forgotten how vulnerable it made you, how much it hurt to care about someone who could leave. But watching Ethan with his daughter, seeing him navigate grief and single parenthood and a new job with quiet determination, she realized that maybe being vulnerable was worth it if it meant not being alone anymore. She went upstairs and found Mia already asleep, the mermaid book clutched to her chest, a small smile on her face. Vivian kissed her daughter's forehead and whispered, "I'm trying, baby. I'm really trying." Then she went to her own room and fell asleep thinking about hot chocolate and second chances, and a man who'd taught her that sometimes the bravest thing you could do was just show up and be human. 3 weeks later, on a Saturday morning that arrived with the kind of cold that warned winter was coming whether Chicago was ready or not, Vivian found herself standing in the cereal aisle of a grocery store in Bridgeport, trying to decide between 6 different types of granola while Ethan leaned against the cart looking amused. "It's cereal," he said, "not a hostile merger negotiation. Granola is important. Some of these have too much sugar. Some don't have enough protein. And this one has—" She squinted at the label. "I don't even know what this ingredient is." "Then don't buy that one." "But what if it's the best one and I'm missing out?" Ethan reached past her and grabbed a box at random. "This one. Problem solved." "You didn't even look at the nutritional information." "It has oats and nuts. That's granola. Everything else is marketing." Vivian took the box from him and put it in the cart, shaking her head. "You're impossible. You're overthinking breakfast cereal. I overthink everything. It's who I am." I've noticed. They'd fallen into this pattern over the past few weeks. Casual time together that felt easy in a way Vivian hadn't experienced in years. Weekend grocery runs because Ethan knew which stores had the best prices, and Vivian had finally admitted she had no idea how normal people shopped. Playground visits where the girls played while the adults talked about everything and nothing. Dinners at each other's houses that started as obligations and became something they both looked forward to. Nothing had been decided or defined. They were just 2 single parents figuring out how to be friends while their daughters became inseparable and the lines between professional and personal got blurrier by the day. Mia and Ava were currently terrorizing the bakery section, trying to convince the woman behind the counter to let them sample every type of cookie. Vivian could see them through the gap in the shelves, their heads close together, giggling about something. "They're going to get us kicked out," Ethan said, following her gaze. "Probably. Should we intervene?" "Nah, let them have fun." They moved through the store slowly, Ethan pointing out which brands were worth the money and which were just expensive packaging. Vivian found herself actually enjoying grocery shopping for the first time in her adult life. Not because she cared about saving $3 on pasta, but because Ethan made it feel like an adventure instead of a chore. "Can I ask you something?" Vivian said as they reached the checkout line. "Sure." "Why are you helping me learn how to grocery shop? I'm perfectly capable of feeding myself and Mia." Ethan started unloading items onto the conveyor belt. "Because a month ago you told me you hadn't been to a regular grocery store in 5 years. That you have everything delivered or eat out. And I figured maybe you'd like to know what it feels like to be normal once in a while." Normal. Yeah, regular people stuff. Shopping for food, comparing prices, fighting over the last good avocado. "Is that what this is? You teaching me how to be regular?" "I'm teaching you that not everything valuable has a dollar sign attached to it. Some things are just—" He paused, searching for the word. "Simple." And simple is good sometimes. The cashier started scanning items and Vivian pulled out her credit card, but Ethan put his hand over hers. "Let me get this one. You bought pizza last week and the bookstore trip before that." "You don't have to." "I know, but I want to contribute. This friendship thing only works if it goes both ways." Vivian withdrew her hand and let him pay, understanding that this mattered to him in ways that had nothing to do with money and everything to do with pride and equality and not being someone's charity case. They loaded the groceries into Ethan's car, Her Mercedes had stayed home today because Ethan had insisted his Honda was better for real errands and drove back to his apartment with the girls in the back seat singing off-key to songs on the radio. Ethan's apartment was small, a two-bedroom on the second floor of an old brick building with radiator heat and windows that didn't quite seal right. But it was clean and warm and filled with evidence of life actually being lived. Ava's drawings on the fridge, books stacked on every available surface, photos of Sarah scattered throughout like she was still part of the family. Vivian had been here twice before, and each time she'd been struck by how different it felt from her own house. This place had history and memory and love built into the walls. Her house had expensive furniture and empty rooms. They put away groceries while the girls disappeared into Ava's bedroom to play. Ethan made coffee and they sat at his small kitchen table by the window that overlooked the alley behind the building. "I got a call from Detective Ramirez yesterday," Ethan said, wrapping his hands around his mug. "About the case?" "They caught him, the guy from the alley. He'd been arrested in Indiana on similar charges. When they ran his prints through the system, it connected to the Chicago case." Vivian's breath caught. "That's good. That's really good." "Yeah, Ramirez said they have solid evidence, security footage, my testimony, physical evidence from the scene. He's not getting out anytime soon. How do you feel about it?" Ethan was quiet for a moment. "Relieved, mostly. Angry that it took this long. Grateful it's over, all of it at the same time." "Did they ask you to testify?" "Probably. Ramirez said the prosecutor would be in touch. I told her I'd do whatever they needed." "What about Ava? Will she have to?" "No, she's a minor and she wasn't the direct victim. They won't make her go through that." Vivian felt tension she didn't know she'd been carrying release from her shoulders. Thank God. Mia either. Ramirez was clear about that. The case is strong enough without putting the kids through more trauma. They sat in silence for a while, drinking coffee and listening to the sounds of the girls playing in the next room. Outside the window, autumn leaves blew across the alley in small tornadoes of red and gold. "Can I tell you something?" Vivian said finally. "Always. I've been thinking a lot lately about what kind of person I want Mia to remember me as. Not CEO Vivian or successful businesswoman Vivian, just Mom. And I'm realizing I don't like the answer." Ethan set down his mug. "What do you mean?" "I mean, she's 8 years old, and she's spent most of her life watching me prioritize work over her, watching me measure success in quarterly reports instead of moments. I've missed so many things, Ethan. School plays and parent-teacher conferences, and just regular Tuesday afternoons because I was too busy being important." "You're being pretty hard on yourself." "Am I? Because when that man grabbed her in the alley, when I got that phone call, the first thing I thought was that I'd been wasting time. All these years building a company, and I'd been missing the only thing that actually mattered." Ethan reached across the table and took her hand. "You're here now. You're trying. That counts for something." "Does it? Or am I just overcompensating because I feel guilty?" "Both, probably, but that doesn't make it less real." He squeezed her hand. "Look, I'm not going to tell you that you've been a perfect parent. You know you haven't. But I've watched you over the past month and I've seen you change. I've seen you show up for Mia in ways that clearly don't come naturally to you, and that matters more than all the times you weren't there. How do you do it? Balance everything? Work and Ava and not losing yourself in the process? I don't balance it. That's a myth. Some days Ava gets more of me and work suffers. Some days I have to focus on work and she watches too much TV and eats cereal for dinner. You just do the best you can and forgive yourself for the rest. I'm not good at forgiving myself. I've noticed." He smiled slightly. "But maybe that's something you could work on. For Mia. For yourself." Vivian looked down at their joined hands, his rough and scarred from years of physical work, hers soft and manicured, and thought about all the ways they were different and all the ways that didn't matter. "I'm glad you're in our lives," she said quietly. "Both of you. I know this whole situation started because of something terrible, but I can't imagine going back to before I knew you." Ethan's expression shifted into something Vivian couldn't quite read. "Vivian, I'm not saying this to make things weird. I just want you to know that you've changed how I see the world, how I see what matters. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful too, for the job, for the friendship, for Mia being good for Ava. All of it." "Just that?" The question hung in the air between them. Ethan's hand tightened on hers slightly. What are you asking me?
Vivian took a breath.
I'm asking if this is just friendship to you. If that's all it can be. Because lately I've been feeling... She stopped, suddenly terrified. Never mind. Forget I said anything. Vivian. No, really, it's fine. I'm just tired and emotional about the case closing, and I'm not thinking clearly. Vivian. He said it firmer this time, making her stop. I've been feeling it too. Her heart stuttered. What?
Whatever this is between us. I feel it. I've been trying not to because I work for you and it's complicated, and I don't want to mess up what we have. But yeah, I feel it. Oh. Oh? I didn't think... I wasn't sure if... She laughed shakily. I'm usually better with words. You're usually not talking about things that matter this much. No, I'm not. She looked at him directly. So what do we do about it? I don't know. What do you want to do about it? Honest answer? Always. I want to see where this goes. I want to stop pretending we're just friends when I think about you constantly and look for excuses to see you and care about you in ways that have nothing to do with work or our daughters. Ethan exhaled slowly. That's pretty honest. Too honest? No, just... He stood up, pulling her with him, and suddenly they were standing in his tiny kitchen facing each other with less than a foot of space between them. I need to be clear about something. Okay. I'm not looking for casual. I did casual after Sarah died, and it was empty and awful, and I won't do that again. Especially not with you. Especially not with our daughters involved. I'm not looking for casual either. And I need to know you're sure about this. Because once we cross this line, there's no going back to how things were. And if it doesn't work out, it affects more than just us. Vivian understood what he was saying, understood the weight of it. Their daughters were best friends. He worked for her company. Their lives were already tangled together in complicated ways that would make a breakup catastrophic. But she also understood that some things were worth the risk. I'm sure, she said. Terrified, but sure. Yeah? Yeah. He smiled then, really smiled, and it transformed his entire face. Okay then. Okay. I'm going to kiss you now, if that's all right. Please do. He did. Slow and careful and perfect in its imperfection, his hand coming up to cup her face, her hands finding his waist and pulling him closer. It was brief, but it was enough to change everything. When they pulled apart, Vivian was smiling and crying at the same time, overwhelmed by how much she'd been holding back without realizing it. You okay? Ethan asked softly. Yeah, more than okay. I didn't think I'd feel like this again. After Mia's father left, after I threw myself into work, I convinced myself I didn't need this. Didn't want it. And now? Now I'm realizing I was lying to myself. A crash from Ava's bedroom made them both jump apart. Ethan sighed. I should check on that. Probably. He kissed her once more, quick and sweet, then went to investigate. Vivian stood in his kitchen, her hand pressed to her lips, and tried to remember how to breathe normally. The crash turned out to be nothing serious, just a stack of books that Ava had built into a tower that had collapsed. But by the time Ethan returned, Vivian had composed herself back into something resembling a functional adult. They spent the rest of the afternoon together, all four of them, playing board games and watching movies and existing in that comfortable space where the future felt bright instead of terrifying. When it was time to leave, Mia hugged Ava goodbye and Vivian found herself standing in Ethan's doorway, not wanting to go. Same time next week? He asked. Or sooner, if you want. I want. She kissed him one more time, not caring that the girls might see, then took Mia's hand and walked down to her car feeling lighter than she had in years. The next month passed in a blur of work and stolen moments and slow, careful steps towards something that felt like it might be love. Ethan excelled at his job, implementing safety protocols that made the Mercer Capitol building one of the most secure in Chicago. The whispers about how he'd gotten hired had faded completely, replaced by respect and recognition that he'd earned through competence and hard work. Vivian learned how to leave work at the office, how to say no to evening meetings, how to prioritize moments with Mia over conference calls. It didn't come naturally, and she stumbled often, but she kept trying,
The girls flourished. Ava's nightmares decreased, and her therapist reported significant progress in processing her grief. Mia stopped being afraid of strangers and started sleeping through the night again. And through it all, Vivian and Ethan navigated the complicated territory of dating while co-parenting, of being colleagues and partners, of building something real in the ruins of what had started as tragedy. They kept it quiet at work, maintaining professional boundaries during office hours. But on weekends, they were just Vivian and Ethan, two people who'd found each other in the worst possible way and decided to make something good out of it anyway. On a bright Saturday in late November, Vivian drove to Bridgeport and picked up Ethan and Ava, then headed north to a park in Lincoln Park that had playgrounds and walking paths and enough space for two little girls to run wild. The temperature had dropped into the 40s and the sky was that particular shade of gray that promised snow eventually. Mia and Ava bundled in their winter coats, ran straight for the wooden castle structure at the center of the playground. Vivian and Ethan walked the perimeter path, their hands linked, watching the girls play. "I've been thinking," Ethan said. About? About where this is going. Us." Vivian's stomach tightened. And I think we should tell the girls. Make it official. They're going to figure it out anyway, and I'd rather they hear it from us." "You're sure?" "I'm sure about you. About us. About wanting this to be real and not just something we hide." Vivian stopped walking and turned to face him. "I'm sure too. More sure than I've been about anything in a long time." "So we tell them." "We tell them." They called the girls over. Ava and Mia came running, cheeks pink from cold and exertion, and threw themselves onto the bench where Vivian and Ethan sat. "What?" Mia asked. "Are we leaving already?" "No, we just wanted to talk to you both about something," Vivian said. Ava's eyes went wide. "Are you getting married?" Ethan laughed. "No, not yet anyway, but we did want to tell you that we're dating. That means—" "We know what dating means, Dad," Ava interrupted. "We're not babies." "So you're boyfriend and girlfriend?" Mia asked. "Something like that," Vivian said. "Is that okay with you?" Mia looked at Ava. Ava looked at Mia. Some kind of silent communication passed between them. "We already knew," Mia said finally. Ethan blinked. "You knew? You guys aren't subtle," Ava added. "You look at each other all weird and smile a lot, and Dad hasn't been this happy since before Mom died." Vivian felt her throat tighten. "How long have you known?" "Like 3 weeks," Mia said. "We've been waiting for you to tell us." "And you're okay with it?" Both girls nodded enthusiastically. "It means we get to hang out more," Ava said. "And maybe eventually we could be like sisters," Mia added hopefully. "Whoa, slow down," Ethan said. "We're just dating. Nobody's talking about yet," Ava finished for him. "But maybe someday." The girls ran back to the playground before either adult could respond, leaving Vivian and Ethan staring after them in shock. "That went better than expected," Vivian said. "They've clearly been planning this. They're terrifying." "Yeah." Ethan pulled her closer. "But they're not wrong about me being happier. I am. Because of you. I'm happier too. I didn't even realize how unhappy I was until I met you and Ava. Until I saw what life could look like when you prioritize the right things." They sat together on the bench, watching their daughters play, and Vivian thought about how far she'd come in just a few months. From a woman who'd fired a hero to a woman who was learning how to be human again. It wasn't a clean transformation, wasn't a simple arc from bad to good. She still made mistakes, still prioritized wrong sometimes, still struggled to let go of control. But she was trying, and she had people in her life now who reminded her why it mattered. The afternoon faded into evening and the temperature dropped further. They gathered the girls and headed back to Vivian's house, where she'd promised to make dinner. Nothing fancy, just pasta and salad and garlic bread, the kind of meal Ethan had taught her to make without overthinking it. They ate together at her dining table, the 4 of them, and it felt right in a way that Vivian's house never had before. The space was still too big and too expensive, but with Ethan and Ava there, it felt less empty. Less like a showpiece and more like a home. After dinner, the girls went upstairs to watch a movie while the adults cleaned up. They moved around each other easily now, a practiced rhythm that came from spending time together, learning each other's patterns. "I got an offer this week," Vivian said as she loaded the dishwasher. Ethan looked up from the pot he was scrubbing. "What kind of offer?" "A hedge fund in New York. They want to bring me in as COO. Significant pay increase, stock options, the works." His hands stilled. Are you considering it? A month ago, I would have jumped at it. It's exactly the kind of opportunity I've been working toward my whole career. And now? Now I have reasons to stay that matter more than a job title. She closed the dishwasher and turned to face him.
I turned them down. Relief flooded his features. Yeah? Yeah. Mercer Capital is successful and stable. I don't need to prove anything anymore. And I'm not willing to uproot Mia's life when she's finally happy. When we're finally happy. Ethan set down the pot and crossed to her, pulling her into his arms. I can't tell you how glad I am to hear that.
You weren't worried I'd leave? Terrified, actually, but I wasn't going to ask you to stay if the job was what you really wanted. It's not. This is what I want. You and Ava and Mia and quiet Saturday afternoons and learning how to be normal. He kissed her forehead. There's nothing normal about you, Vivian Mercer, but I'm glad you're staying anyway. They stood in her kitchen holding each other, and Vivian felt something settle into place that she hadn't known was missing. This was what peace felt like. This was what home felt like. Not a building or a bank account or a corporate title, but a person who saw you at your worst and chose to stay anyway. The weeks leading up to the holidays passed quickly. Vivian hosted Thanksgiving at her house, a chaotic affair with burnt rolls and undercooked turkey that somehow became one of the best meals she'd ever shared. Ethan brought Dorothy Chen, his elderly neighbor, and she'd regaled them with stories about Ethan as a younger man that made Ava giggle and Ethan turn red. They spent Christmas Eve at Ethan's apartment, small and warm and perfect. Ava had made decorations out of construction paper, and Mia had contributed ornaments from Vivian's collection that she insisted the tree needed. On Christmas morning, they exchanged small gifts. Nothing extravagant, just tokens of affection and understanding. Ethan gave Vivian a book he thought she'd like, and a promise to teach her how to change her own oil. Vivian gave him a watch to replace the broken one he'd been wearing, and a framed photo of all four of them from Thanksgiving. The girls gave each other friendship bracelets they'd made themselves, braided in complicated patterns that had taken them weeks. It was simple and imperfect and exactly what Vivian needed. New Year's Eve found them back at the park in Bridgeport, the same one where they'd told the girls they were dating. The temperature was brutal, well below freezing, but they'd bundled up and come anyway because Ava wanted to see the fireworks from the neighborhood display. The girls played on the frozen playground equipment while Vivian and Ethan stood close for warmth, watching the sky for the first burst of color. This year was insane, Vivian said. That's one word for it. A year ago, I was a completely different person. I measured success in profit margins. I barely saw my daughter. I thought compassion was weakness. And now? Now I know better. Now I know that the strongest people are the ones who show up even when it's hard, who fight for strangers, who sacrifice everything for the people they love. She looked up at him. People like you. I'm not that special, Vivian. Yes, you are. You saved my daughter. You saved me. You showed me what it means to actually live instead of just existing. You did that yourself. I just gave you a reason to try. The first firework exploded overhead, painting the sky in gold and silver. Ava and Mia cheered, their voices carrying across the frozen park. Ethan pulled Vivian closer. I love you. I should have said it sooner, but I'm saying it now. I love you. Vivian's breath caught. I love you too, so much it scares me sometimes. Good scared or bad scared? Good scared, the kind that means it matters, the kind that means I have something to lose. You're not going to lose me. I'm not going anywhere. Another firework burst, then another, filling the sky with color and noise and light. The girls danced and laughed, and Vivian stood in Ethan's arms watching her daughter be happy, watching Ava be carefree, watching the world they'd built together shine bright against the darkness. She thought about this moment in that alley months ago, the split-second decision Ethan had made that changed everything. He could have walked past, could have called the police and kept going, could have chosen safety over action. But he hadn't. He'd chosen to fight, to bleed, to sacrifice himself for a child he didn't know. And in doing so, he'd taught Vivian the most important lesson of her life, that true strength isn't measured in power or profit or success. It's measured in the moments when you choose to be brave, when you choose to be kind, when you choose to see people as humans instead of metrics. Ethan had done that for Mia. And then, without meaning to, he'd done it for Vivian too. He'd seen past the CEO facade to the lonely, broken woman underneath. He'd given her grace when she didn't deserve it. He'd shown her that change was possible if you were willing to do the work. The fireworks continued, each burst more spectacular than the last. Mia and Ava grabbed each other's hands and spun in circles, their laughter cutting through the cold night air. "Dad," Ava called. "Vivian, come here!" They walked over. The girls pulled them into their circle, all four of them holding hands now, connected. "Make a wish," Mia said. "For the new year." Vivian closed her eyes. She didn't wish for money or success or recognition. She wished for more moments like this, more laughter, more love, more chances to be the kind of person Mia could be proud of, more days with Ethan teaching her how to be human. When she opened her eyes, Ethan was watching her with an expression that made her heart ache in the best way. "What did you wish for?" he asked quietly. "Everything I already have." The final firework exploded overhead, a massive starburst of gold that lit up the entire sky. And in that moment, surrounded by the people she loved most in the world, Vivian Mercer understood what success really meant. It meant showing up. It meant being present. It meant measuring your life not in quarterly reports, but in the moments that take your breath away, and the people who make you want to be better. It meant a man who checked his watch in an alley because even bleeding and battered, he still tried to do the right thing. It meant a daughter who laughed without fear. It meant a family built not from blood but from choice and sacrifice, and the slow, patient work of becoming someone worth knowing. The fireworks faded. The night grew quiet except for the sound of their breathing and the distant hum of the city. They stood together in that frozen park, four people who'd found each other through tragedy and decided to build something beautiful from the wreckage. And as they walked back to the cars, Ava holding Ethan's hand and Mia holding Vivian's, with promises to meet tomorrow for brunch and the day after for ice skating and next week for a movie, Vivian felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not the desperate kind that came from wanting something you didn't have, but the quiet, steady kind that came from knowing exactly where you belonged and who you belonged with. She looked over at Ethan, who smiled at her across the parking lot, and she smiled back. This was her life now. Messy and complicated and nothing like she'd planned, but real in ways her old life never was. Full of people who mattered more than profit margins. Full of moments that couldn't be measured in dollars but were priceless anyway. She'd spent 20 years climbing a ladder that led nowhere. And then a widowed father with a hero's heart had shown her a different path, one that led home.